Hey there, welcome to Broderos. Tonight, we've got hours of chilling horror stories combined with soothing rain sounds to help you relax and sleep. Before you drift off, leave a comment below and let us know where you're listening from and what time it is. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe right away. If you end up not enjoying it, you can always take it back later. Get cozy and let the fear take over. The unknown caller. Have you ever received a phone call that changed everything? I hadn't thought much about it until that evening in late October when the crisp air outside matched the chill creeping into my bones. It was just past 8. The faint glow of my desk lamp flickered against the darkening sky. I was wrapped up in my usual routine, working late, trying to meet deadlines that seemed to grow heavier by the day. The phone rang, shattering the silence. The number was unfamiliar, a string of digits I had never seen before. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, but something compelled me to answer. Perhaps it was the mystery of the unknown that pulled me in, or perhaps it was the mundane nature of my evening, begging for a distraction. "Hello?" I said, my voice steady despite the unease gnawing at my insides. "Is this Marcus Evans?" The voice on the other end was low, almost gravelly, as if it had been steeped in shadow. It sent a shiver down my spine. "Yes, who is this?" I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral, though a sense of dread settled over me. "I know about your mistakes, Marcus. You should have never done it," the voice continued, each word dripping with a sinister calmness. A cold sweat formed on my brow. What did this person mean? What mistakes? My mind raced back over the years. Mistakes were a dime a dozen, but which one was he talking about? "Who are you?" I demanded, trying to mask my fear with bravado. But deep down, I felt the weight of every poor decision I had ever made, as if they were looming specters ready to drag me into darkness. "I'll be watching you," the caller said before abruptly hanging up. I stared at the phone, my heart pounding in my chest. Was this a prank? Some cruel joke from an old acquaintance? The question swirled in my mind, and despite the absurdity of it all, I felt a creeping paranoia settle in. I glanced around my dimly lit apartment, half expecting to see shadows moving in the corners of the room. The incident gnawed at me long after the call ended. I tried to shake it off, convincing myself that it was nothing more than a prank. Yet, the unease lingered, a quiet echo of the unknown that would soon become an unwelcome companion in my life. As I leaned back in my chair, I tried to distract myself with work, but my mind kept drifting back to the call. I was 32, an average guy with an average job in a small marketing firm in the heart of Chicago. My life was predictable, and though I often craved excitement, I never imagined it would come in the form of a sinister voice on the other end of a phone call. In high school, I had been the quiet one, blending into the background while others shined. I didn't have many friends, and the few I did have were scattered across the country, busy with their own lives. In a sense, I was used to loneliness, but this felt different. This was an isolation that seeped into my bones, a vulnerability that left me feeling exposed. As the clock ticked on, my thoughts spiraled. I picked up my phone again, checking for messages or missed calls. Nothing. Just the haunting silence of the evening, punctuated by the occasional distant siren. Yet, in the following days, the calls didn't stop. They came more frequently, each one filled with vague threats and cryptic reminders of my past. The unknown caller seemed to know everything about me, my life, my choices, the paths I had taken and those I hadn't. Each time the phone rang, I felt the walls closing in. My once cozy apartment became a prison, each shadow stretching menacingly towards me. I was caught in a web of fear, and I had no idea how to escape. The following week was a blur of unease. I became hyper-aware of my surroundings, jumping at every sound. At work, I was distracted, my mind constantly drifting to the unknown caller. My colleagues noticed my distraction, casting concerned glances my way. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Marcus, one of them, Linda, remarked with a concerned smile during our morning coffee break. I forced a chuckle, brushing it off. "Just didn't sleep well," I replied, but the truth was far more sinister. Each night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening for the ring of my phone, the sinister voice that had invaded my thoughts. I tried to convince myself that it was all in my head, yet every time I closed my eyes, I saw shadows dancing just beyond my vision, whispering secrets I could never quite hear. The calls continued, each one more unnerving than the last. "You can't run from your past, Marcus," the voice taunted one evening, its tone like icy fingers creeping down my spine. The words replayed in my mind, a relentless echo of guilt that I couldn't shake off. I had made mistakes, who hadn't? Yet the way he spoke suggested I had committed some unspeakable sin, and my imagination began to run wild with possibilities. As the days passed, I felt the weight of isolation pressing down harder. Friends I had once relied on had grown distant, and I hadn't realized how much I had withdrawn from my social life until it was too late. I began to retreat further into myself, avoiding calls and texts from those who cared. I couldn't risk sharing my fear. How could I explain something so abstract and terrifying? One evening, as I sat in my apartment, the dim light casting long shadows on the wall, I felt a resolve wash over me. I needed to confront this fear, to find out who was behind these calls. It was time to take action. I couldn't allow this unknown entity to control my life any longer. With shaky hands, I opened my laptop and began to research. I typed in the number that had haunted me for days. My heart raced as I pressed enter. The search results revealed nothing substantial, just a dead end with vague mentions in online forums about nuisance calls. I scrolled through posts filled with complaints from people experiencing similar situations, a sense of solidarity flickering within me. I wasn't alone in this strange nightmare. As I dove deeper, I stumbled upon a discussion board where people shared their experiences with stalkers and anonymous callers. The stories were chilling, filled with encounters that led to harassment and, in some cases, worse. It was a stark reminder that the world was filled with shadows, and I was at the mercy of one. That night, I decided to call the police. After all, it wasn't just a prank, it was becoming increasingly invasive. I explained my situation to the officer on the other end, who listened patiently. "It's probably just someone trying to mess with you," he said, trying to ease my fears. "But if it continues, let us know." I hung up feeling a mix of relief and frustration. I wanted reassurance, not dismissal. But I had no other options. I returned to my laptop, determined to track the number and find out more. As I clicked through social media pages and public records, I stumbled upon a familiar name, Alex Mercer. It was a name I hadn't thought about in years, a name from my past that I had hoped to forget. Alex was a friend from college, but our friendship had soured after a series of missteps, mainly involving a betrayal that left our relationship in ruins. I had walked away, leaving behind a wake of unresolved feelings and unspoken words. Could it be him? I dismissed the thought, pushing it to the back of my mind. It was too far-fetched. Yet, a part of me couldn't shake the feeling that my past was now clawing its way back to the surface, demanding attention. As I tried to refocus on the task at hand, I reflected on my relationship with Alex. He was charismatic and outgoing, the kind of person who drew people in with his charm. I had admired him once, but jealousy and betrayal had crept in when he started dating Sarah, a girl I had liked for years. I had made a rash decision to confront him, leading to a shouting match that ultimately ended our friendship. Now, I couldn't help but wonder if my past mistakes had come back to haunt me. Had I wronged Alex in such a way that he was now seeking revenge? The mere thought made my stomach churn. I didn't want to believe it, yet the coincidences piled up. That night, sleep eluded me once again. I sat up in bed, the weight of the world pressing down on my chest. I glanced at the clock, 2 a.m. The darkness of my room felt suffocating, the shadows whispering secrets that I couldn't quite grasp. And then it happened. The phone rang. I hesitated before answering, a mix of fear and adrenaline coursing through me. "Hello?" I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to sound composed. "Are you ready to face the truth, Marcus?" The voice was as cold as ever, but there was a distinct edge to it that I hadn't heard before, a familiarity that sent chills racing down my spine. "Who is this?" I pressed, though deep down, I feared I already knew the answer. "Let's just say I'm someone from your past," the voice replied, the tone dripping with malevolence. My heart raced. "What do you want?" "You'll find out soon enough. But remember, Marcus, you can't escape your mistakes." With that, the call ended, leaving me alone in the darkness, the weight of dread settling in my bones. My mind raced. I couldn't ignore this any longer. I had to find out who was behind this and confront the demons I had buried long ago. The next morning, I awoke with the weight of the call pressing heavily on my chest. The words echoed in my mind, "You can't escape your mistakes." I rubbed my eyes, trying to shake off the remnants of sleep, but the dread remained. The light filtering through my curtains felt too bright, too jarring against the shadows that clung to me. I made my way to the kitchen, hoping that a cup of coffee might banish the darkness lurking in the corners of my mind. As I poured the coffee, the steam spiraled up, momentarily distracting me. But just as I took a sip, my phone buzzed on the counter, jolting me back to reality. With trepidation, I glanced at the screen. A new message from an unknown number. My heart raced as I opened it, half expecting a bombshell revelation. Instead, it read, "You don't want to know what I know, Marcus. You should have thought twice." The message hit me like a punch to the gut. Who was this person? Why were they targeting me? I felt the walls of my apartment close in around me, suffocating me with every passing second. I had to find out who this was and why they were haunting me. My usual routine fell away, consumed by a whirlwind of anxiety. At work, I struggled to concentrate. My computer screen blurred before my eyes, and the office chatter sounded distant, like a muffled echo of reality. Linda noticed my distraction again, her brow furrowed with concern. "You okay, Marcus?" "You've been out of it lately," she said, placing a hand on my shoulder. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just a lot on my mind." I didn't want to burden her with my fears. I needed to handle this alone, to unearth the roots of my terror without dragging anyone else into the dark pit I was descending into. When lunchtime rolled around, I stepped out of the office, needing air and space to think. I found myself wandering the streets of downtown Chicago, my mind racing with possibilities. The city felt different, as if the familiar streets were now filled with hidden threats. Every passerby seemed like a potential enemy, every shadow held secrets. I slipped into a small cafe, hoping a warm meal would ground me. As I sat alone, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. My phone buzzed again, and I nearly dropped my fork. I took a deep breath and checked the screen. It was another message from the unknown number. "You're running out of time, Marcus. Do you really think you can hide?" Panic surged through me. How did they know where I was? I glanced around the cafe, searching for anyone who seemed out of place, anyone who could be watching me. The barista was busy making drinks, and a few customers sat engrossed in their laptops, but my mind raced. What if someone was following me, watching my every move? As I exited the cafe, I made a decision. I had to investigate, to confront the source of this torment. I returned home and grabbed my laptop, diving deeper into research about Alex Mercer. Perhaps I could find a clue that would lead me to him, something that would prove he was behind these calls. I searched his name, poring over social media profiles, old articles, and mutual connections. As I scrolled, I found a photo from a college reunion years ago. There he was, beaming with that same infectious smile. But it was the caption beneath the photo that sent a chill down my spine, surrounded by good friends, celebrating the past. I felt a rush of anger mixed with guilt. The past we had shared was tainted by betrayal, and I had pushed him away. Had I underestimated his capacity for revenge? Could my mistakes have come back to haunt me in the form of this anonymous tormentor? As night fell, I paced the floor of my apartment, the shadows creeping in once more. My phone rang again, and my heart raced as I answered. "What do you want?" I shouted, unable to mask the rising panic in my voice. "Do you remember the last time we spoke, Marcus?" It was him, that chilling voice. "You thought it was all behind you, didn't you? But some mistakes refused to stay buried." I felt my stomach drop. "What are you talking about?" I snapped, desperation creeping in. "Remember that night in the dorms? You had a choice to make, and you chose poorly." The voice dripped with malice, each word calculated to cut deep. I felt my blood run cold. The memories flooded back, an altercation during a party, the night I had confronted Alex about Sarah, the way our friendship had shattered into irreparable pieces. That was years ago. "You can't keep bringing it up." I protested, but my voice faltered. "Oh, but I can, Marcus. You should have thought about the consequences." The call ended, leaving me reeling. I slumped against the wall, trying to breathe through the rising tide of panic. I was trapped in a nightmare of my own making, haunted by the choices I had thought were long forgotten. As I stared into the darkness of my apartment, I reflected on how I had always viewed myself as a good person, yet my past was a tapestry woven with mistakes and regrets. I had buried them, hoping they would stay hidden. But now, it seemed like they were clawing their way back to the surface, demanding acknowledgement. Every day I had lived in denial, thinking I could escape the ghosts of my past. But here I was, faced with the consequences of my actions. The psychological pressure was mounting, and I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. I was isolated, battling my demons alone in a world that felt increasingly hostile. As the hours passed, I resolved to take control of the situation. I would confront Alex, if it was him behind the calls, and lay everything bare. I couldn't keep running from my past. The night air felt heavy as I stepped outside, the city's lights flickering like distant stars. I knew I needed to face whatever was lurking in the shadows. I walked the streets of Chicago, my mind racing with memories and regrets. The city, which had once felt vibrant and alive, now felt suffocatingly claustrophobic, its streets echoing my anxiety. The dim streetlights flickered above me, casting shadows that danced like specters on the pavement, mocking my every step. As I approached the campus where I had attended college, an unsettling mix of nostalgia and dread washed over me. The familiar buildings loomed large, their stone facades dark against the evening sky. I had hoped to leave my past behind, but now it felt like the past was dragging me back, pulling me toward the very places I had tried to forget. The dormitory where Alex and I had once lived was still standing, unchanged despite the years. I hesitated at the entrance, memories flooding back unbidden, late-night study sessions, laughter echoing through the halls, and the night our friendship shattered. I took a deep breath and stepped inside, the scent of old wood and disinfectant hitting me like a wave. The lobby was empty, but the faint sounds of laughter drifted up from the common room. I made my way to the second floor, my heart racing with each step. I reached the hallway outside the room we had shared, and for a moment, I stood frozen, staring at the door as if it held the answers to my turmoil. Gathering my courage, I knocked. Silence followed, stretching into an eternity. I knocked again, this time harder, my pulse pounding in my ears. The door creaked open, revealing a startled young man who eyed me curiously. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice tinged with confusion. "I'm looking for Alex Mercer," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The young man frowned, shaking his head. "He hasn't lived here for years. I don't think anyone's heard from him since, what was it, 2 years ago?" A chill ran through me. 2 years ago. The timeline clicked into place, enough time for resentment to fester and turn into something more sinister. "Do you know where I might find him?" I pressed, desperation creeping into my tone. He shrugged. "Sorry, man. I just moved in last semester. You could try searching online." I stepped back, the weight of failure settling over me. I had come here hoping to confront my past, but all I found was more uncertainty. As I walked back to my apartment, my phone buzzed again, and I instinctively held my breath, fearing what it might say. "You're getting warmer, Marcus. But it's not just about you." What did that mean? I felt a surge of anger rising within me. Why was this happening? Why was I being forced to confront ghosts I thought I had left behind? I couldn't keep allowing this unknown force to dictate my actions. It was time to take control. That night, I sat in front of my laptop, determined to find answers. I scoured social media, combing through any mentions of Alex. After a few hours, I stumbled upon an old forum thread that referenced him. It was filled with posts from people wondering what had happened to him, speculation that bordered on conspiracy. One post caught my eye, dated just a month prior. "He's back. Be careful. He knows things." My heart raced. What did this mean? Did Alex have followers? Was he pulling strings from the shadows? The possibilities swirled in my mind, amplifying my anxiety. I quickly responded to the thread, asking for any information about his whereabouts. As I hit send, I felt a rush of hope mingled with dread. As the hours passed, sleep eluded me once again. I felt like a pawn in someone else's game, trapped in a web I couldn't escape. I spent the night pacing, waiting for a reply, my thoughts spiraling into darker territories. What if I couldn't find Alex? What if he never wanted to be found? The next morning brought a new wave of exhaustion, but I refused to succumb to fear. I got dressed, my mind set on action. I needed to confront my demons head on. If Alex was behind these calls, I would find him and face him. I spent the day gathering information, combing through every detail I could find about Alex's life since college. I visited local libraries, searching old newspapers for any mention of him. Hours stretched on, and my frustration mounted. There were no articles, no mentions. He had seemingly vanished. As evening approached, I stopped by a nearby bar, hoping to drown my worries in a drink. The dimly lit space was filled with familiar faces, laughter mingling with the clinking of glasses. I ordered a whiskey, savoring the burn as it slid down my throat. For a brief moment, I felt a sense of normalcy wash over me, but it was fleeting. In the back of the bar, I spotted a group of familiar faces, old college friends. I hadn't seen them in years, but the nostalgia hit hard. It took a moment for me to gather my courage, but I approached them, hoping for some insight into Alex's whereabouts. "Hey, guys," I said, forcing a smile. "Long time no see. Marcus. Good to see you," Sarah exclaimed, her voice brightening the dim room. I glanced at her, my heart sinking. She was the reason Alex and I had fought, the reason I had walked away. The weight of our shared history hung heavy between us, but I pushed it aside. "Have you heard from Alex?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. The smiles faded as the group exchanged glances. "Not in a while." "Why?" Sarah asked, concern etching her features. "I've been getting some strange calls." "I think it might be him." "What kind of calls?" one of the guys interjected, leaning in closer. "Just weird things. About my past. It's unsettling." They listened, their faces shifting from curiosity to concern. "Alex has been acting strange lately," Sarah said quietly, glancing at the others. "He's been reclusive. We didn't know if we should reach out." "Why?" I pressed. "What do you know?" "Just rumors," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Some say he's been getting into some dark stuff, maybe even trying to make connections with people from our past." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. The unease I had been carrying for weeks suddenly felt like a tangible force pressing down on me. "What do you mean, dark stuff?" "Things he shouldn't be involved with. Some think he's trying to get revenge on those who wronged him." A chill swept over me. It wasn't just me he was targeting, he had turned his focus onto anyone connected to his past. I felt trapped, as if I had been pulled into a web spun from our shared history. As the night deepened, I left the bar with a sense of foreboding. The world felt darker, the shadows more pronounced. I couldn't escape what I had done, and I couldn't run from Alex. I needed to confront him, to end this twisted game before it consumed me entirely. The air felt heavy as I left the bar, my mind swirling with a mix of dread and determination. I couldn't ignore the unsettling whispers of my friends. They had known Alex too, had shared in the camaraderie of our college days, and now they were voicing fears I couldn't brush aside. I had to take action. I needed to confront the specter of my past before it completely enveloped me. That night, I tossed and turned in bed, haunted by memories that refused to stay buried. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, as if Alex were lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside my window, sent my heart racing. Sleep was a luxury I could no longer afford. As dawn broke, I made a decision. I would reach out to him. I'd try to find him through the very channels I had shunned. I grabbed my laptop and began crafting a message, pouring out my thoughts and emotions, trying to appeal to whatever remnants of our friendship still lingered. "Alex, I know things have been rough between us. I want to talk. I need to understand what's going on. Please reach out. With a shaky breath, I hit send, the words hanging in the air like a spell cast into the unknown. I didn't expect an immediate response. After all, it had been years since our last conversation. Still, the act of reaching out felt liberating, like a small flame flickering in the encroaching darkness. As the day dragged on, I fought the urge to check my phone every few minutes. I immersed myself in work, trying to maintain a facade of normalcy, but I was acutely aware of the shadow of dread looming over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that the calm before the storm was upon me. That evening, I decided to visit a local coffee shop, hoping the change of scenery would ease my restless thoughts. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, mingling with the sound of light chatter and the soft clinking of cups. I settled into a corner booth, pulling out my laptop to do some research on other possible ways to contact Alex. As I scrolled through social media, a notification pinged on my phone. My heart raced as I opened it, my breath catching when I saw Alex's name. He had replied, "You really think I would just forget? You were never there when it mattered most." The words cut deeper than I anticipated, each letter steeped in bitterness. I stared at the screen, a knot tightening in my stomach. I had hoped for a chance at reconciliation, but his response felt like a dagger, twisting in the wound of our shared past. I quickly typed back, my fingers trembling as I attempted to convey my sincerity. "I know I made mistakes. I should have been there for you. I'm sorry. Please, let's talk." I hit send, my heart racing as I waited for a reply. I tried to drown my anxieties in the ambient sounds of the cafe, but the noise faded into a distant hum, and all I could focus on was the screen in front of me. Minutes felt like hours as I sipped my coffee, staring at the screen, willing him to respond. Finally, my phone buzzed again, and I leaned forward, my pulse quickening. "There's nothing to talk about. You made your choices. Now it's time for you to face the consequences." Panic surged through me. I felt trapped in a cycle of torment, his words echoing my deepest fears. This wasn't just about me anymore, it was about everything I had tried to bury. As I gathered my things to leave, I noticed a shadow across the table from me. I looked up to find a man staring at me intently, his expression a mix of curiosity and concern. He was in his 30s, dressed casually in a denim jacket and a beanie, but his eyes held a depth that suggested he understood more than he let on. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice low and steady. I hesitated, unsure of how much to share. "I'm dealing with something. An old friend. It's complicated." He nodded, leaning back slightly as if he didn't want to pry but couldn't help himself. "Sometimes those old connections can haunt us, you know? I've been there." His words struck a chord within me, and I found myself opening up. "I thought I could move on, but it feels like the past is catching up with me. I've made mistakes, and now I'm paying the price." The man studied me, his brow furrowing in thought. "If it's really bothering you, maybe you should confront it head on. Avoiding it will only make it worse." His words resonated with me, igniting a flicker of courage. I realized that I couldn't keep running from Alex. I had to find him and confront him, even if it meant facing my darkest fears. "Thanks," I said, appreciating the unexpected support. "I think I need to do just that." After exchanging a few more words, I left the cafe, the man's advice echoing in my mind. As I walked home, the weight of my decision settled upon me, a mixture of anxiety and resolve. The following day, I took a leap of faith and decided to visit Alex's last known address, a small apartment complex on the outskirts of the city. The sky was overcast, casting a gloomy pall over the landscape, and I could feel a storm brewing within me as I approached the building. When I arrived, I hesitated at the entrance, my heart pounding. The building looked uninviting, its exterior cracked and worn, mirroring my own inner turmoil. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The dimly lit hallway reeked of stale smoke and neglect. I glanced at the directory on the wall, searching for his name. Room number 12. I walked slowly down the hall, my footsteps echoing ominously. As I approached the door, I felt a knot tightening in my stomach. What if he didn't want to see me? What if he lashed out, demanding retribution for the past? I raised my hand to knock, my heart racing in my chest. But before I could touch the door, it swung open, revealing Alex standing there, his expression unreadable. The sight of him sent a jolt through me, the years melting away as I faced the ghost of my past. "Marcus," he said, his voice flat. "Alex," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "What do you want?" he asked, crossing his arms defensively. I hesitated, trying to gather my thoughts. "I want to talk. About everything that's happened." He scoffed, stepping aside to let me in. "Come on in then. Let's see what you have to say." As I entered, the room felt suffocating, the walls closing in around us. The atmosphere was thick with unresolved tension, and I knew that this conversation could either break the chains of the past or tighten them even further. As I stepped into the dimly lit room, the heavy scent of stale cigarettes and something faintly metallic hit me like a wave. The walls were adorned with peeling paint, and the furniture was a mismatched assortment of hand-me-downs. The atmosphere felt charged with unspoken words and lingering resentment, a perfect reflection of our fractured friendship. Alex stood across the small living room, arms crossed, his posture tense. His once familiar face was now shadowed by a scruffy beard and tired eyes, hinting at the struggles he had faced. I remembered the vibrant, energetic friend I had known, always quick with a joke and a smile. The man before me felt like a stranger. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a worn-out couch that sagged under its own weight. I complied, the cushions enveloping me as if they were trying to swallow my anxiety whole. "I wasn't expecting you to actually come here," he said, a mix of surprise and hostility in his voice. "Most people wouldn't bother after so long." "I know. I've been trying to reach out. I just want to talk about what happened between us," I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil churning inside me. "What's there to talk about?" he shot back, his eyes narrowing. "You left. You chose your path, and I was just a casualty of your decisions." His words stung, the bitterness lacing his tone hitting me like a slap. "I didn't leave you intentionally. I was lost, Alex. I was trying to figure things out, and I thought—" "You thought you could just walk away?" he interrupted, his voice rising. "You thought it wouldn't matter? You have no idea what it was like for me after you left." I felt a wave of guilt wash over me, but I couldn't let it overwhelm me. "I know I messed up. I should have been there for you. I should have fought harder for our friendship." Alex scoffed, pacing the room like a caged animal. "It's too late for apologies, Marcus. You don't understand the consequences of your actions. You've been living your life, while I've been dealing with the fallout." "What fallout?" I pressed, feeling a mixture of concern and fear. "What do you mean?" He stopped, turning to face me, his expression a mixture of anger and vulnerability. "Do you really want to know?" because I don't think you're ready for the truth. Try me, I said, my heart racing. The atmosphere crackled with tension, the air thickening as we stood on the brink of something monumental. For a moment, he hesitated, as if weighing his options. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and filled with an unsettling seriousness. After you left, I felt abandoned. I started to fall into darker circles. I made choices, bad choices, that I can't take back. I leaned forward, trying to keep my voice steady. What kind of choices, Alex? What are you involved in? He looked away, his jaw tightening. You don't want to know. It's not just me anymore. There are others involved. People who don't forget easily, especially when they feel wronged. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? Are you saying they're after you? He nodded slowly, his gaze drifting toward the window, as if searching for something beyond the glass. And anyone connected to me. I tried to protect myself, but the past doesn't just fade away. It hunts you down. My heart raced. This was worse than I'd imagined. Alex, we can figure this out together. We can make things right. He shook his head, his expression hardening. You don't get it. This isn't about making things right. It's about survival. And you're in this too now. The gravity of his words sank in like a stone in my stomach. I had thought coming here would help us heal, but now it felt like I had stepped into a storm with no way out. Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my pocket, breaking the tension in the room. I pulled it out, my heart racing as I saw an unknown number flashing on the screen. Excuse me, I muttered, stepping away from Alex as I answered. Marcus, a low voice said, chilling me to the bone. It was the voice from the calls, familiar yet distorted. You're getting closer to the truth, but be careful. You're playing a dangerous game. I gripped the phone tightly, panic rising in my chest. Who are you? What do you want from me? The voice chuckled softly, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. What do you think I want? It's not about me, it's about what you've done. The past has a way of catching up, doesn't it? Leave me alone. I shouted, my voice echoing in the small room. I hung up, my breath coming in short gasps as I turned back to Alex. What was that? He asked, his expression a mixture of fear and curiosity. It was someone I think is connected to you, I admitted, my heart racing. They know things about us, about what happened. Alex paled, the color draining from his face. This isn't just about us anymore, Marcus. They're serious. They've been watching. A wave of dread washed over me as the realization hit. We were both caught in a web spun from our pasts, and the consequences were reaching out like tendrils, tightening around us. What do we do? I asked, my voice trembling. We need to find a way to protect ourselves, Alex replied, his expression darkening. I've been trying to gather information, but it's dangerous. There are people who want revenge, people who don't care who gets hurt in the process. My mind raced. I had come here to confront the past, to seek closure, but now I felt like I was standing at the edge of a precipice, peering into an abyss. The truth was more terrifying than I could have imagined. Where do we start? I asked, desperation creeping into my tone. There's a contact I've been using, he said, his voice low and cautious. Someone who knows the underground scene. They might be able to help us, but it won't be easy. We'll have to tread carefully. Let's do it, I said, my resolve hardening. If I was going to face this darkness, I wouldn't do it alone. I would confront my past, not just for myself, but for Alex too. As we began to strategize, the weight of what lay ahead settled over us like a storm cloud. I knew we were stepping into dangerous territory, but I was prepared to face whatever horrors awaited us. Together, we would unravel the threads of our pasts and confront the shadows that threatened to consume us. The atmosphere in Alex's apartment felt suffocating, the tension wrapping around us like a heavy shroud. As we sat there, brainstorming a plan, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The shadows in the corners seemed to shift, whispering secrets of their own. "Do you have any idea where we can find this contact?" I asked, my voice breaking the heavy silence that had settled over us. Alex nodded, his expression serious. "His name is Jake. He's involved in some less than legal activities, but he's connected. He knows things that could help us. The problem is, he's not easy to find. Do you trust him?" I asked, my heart racing at the thought of getting entangled with someone who thrived in the shadows. Trust is a strong word. I know him from my past. He's reliable when it comes to information, but his motives can be questionable, Alex admitted, his gaze drifting toward the window as if searching for an escape route. "What do we need to do?" I pressed, urgency building within me. "We need to head to a bar he frequents, the Rusty Anchor. It's a dive on the edge of town, a place where deals go down in dark corners and secrets are whispered over cheap drinks." Alex leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "We should go tonight." "Tonight?" I echoed, my stomach twisting at the thought. "Is that really wise?" "We don't have the luxury of time," he replied, determination flickering in his eyes. "We need answers before it's too late. I can't let them get to you." With a nod, I resolved to follow him into this uncertain darkness. We had already crossed a threshold from which there was no return, and I was ready to face whatever dangers lay ahead. As we prepared to leave, a sense of unease settled over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that our conversation had stirred something that was now lurking in the shadows, watching our every move. The drive to the Rusty Anchor felt surreal. The city passed in a blur of lights and shadows, the air thick with tension. My hands gripped the passenger seat, knuckles white against the fabric, my mind racing with possibilities and fears. What if we were walking into a trap? What if Jake wasn't the ally we needed? We finally arrived at the bar, the neon sign buzzing with a flickering glow that illuminated the otherwise darkened street. A shiver ran down my spine as I stepped out of the car, the chill of the night air wrapping around me like a shroud. Inside, the bar was a dive straight out of a movie, a dimly lit space with a sticky floor and a crowd that ranged from regulars nursing their beers to shady characters huddled in corners, exchanging furtive glances. The air was thick with smoke and the sound of clinking glasses, laughter mingling with hushed conversations that faded into the background. "Stick close," Alex instructed, his tone low as he navigated through the crowd. We made our way to the bar, where a burly bartender wiped down the counter with a rag that had seen better days. Alex leaned in, ordering 2 beers. "We'll wait for Jake to show up." As we sat, I surveyed the room, my instincts on high alert. The atmosphere was charged, a tension in the air that felt palpable. I could feel eyes on us, lurking in the shadows, but I couldn't pinpoint where they were coming from. "Stay calm," Alex said, noticing my nervousness. "We're here for information. That's all." Moments passed, each one stretching into eternity. My mind raced with the possibilities of what could happen next. Then, just as I was beginning to lose hope, I saw him. A figure sauntered through the door, his movements confident, almost predatory. Jake was a tall man with sharp features and a predilection for black leather jackets. His hair was slicked back, and a hint of danger lingered in his gaze as he scanned the room, taking in the patrons with an air of authority. When his eyes landed on us, a smirk curled at the corners of his mouth. "Alex," he said, making his way over, his voice smooth but laced with a sinister undertone. "Haven't seen you in a while. Who's your friend?" "This is Marcus," Alex replied, tension radiating from him. "We need to talk." Jake raised an eyebrow, leaning against the bar, his presence imposing. "Talk about what?" "I've got a busy night ahead." I swallowed hard, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. "We're looking for information about past connections. Things that could be dangerous." Jake's gaze shifted between us, assessing. "Dangerous, huh? You sure you want to dive into that pool? Can you help us or not?" Alex pressed, impatience creeping into his tone. All right, Jake said, a sly grin crossing his face. "But it's going to cost you. Information isn't cheap, and trust me, you're going to want to know what you're getting into." I glanced at Alex, uncertainty gnawing at my gut. "What do we need to know?" Jake leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "There's someone watching you. Someone who doesn't take kindly to loose ends. They've been digging into your past, Marcus. And they won't stop until they find what they're looking for." My heart raced as the reality of his words sank in. "What do you mean? Who are they?" Jake straightened, a shadow flickering across his features. "You need to be careful. The past is like a ghost. It will haunt you until you face it. And sometimes, those ghosts are tied to people who don't forgive easily." The implications of his words sent a shiver down my spine. "What should we do?" "First, you need to get out of here," Jake said, urgency lacing his voice. "I can't guarantee your safety if you stay too long. There are eyes everywhere." Alex and I exchanged worried glances, the gravity of the situation weighing heavily on us. "What about you?" I asked, a knot tightening in my stomach. "What if they come after you too?" Jake shrugged, a nonchalant gesture that belied the seriousness of his warning. "I can handle myself. But you two? You need to lay low for a while. Find somewhere safe." Without another word, he slipped a scrap of paper across the bar, the urgency in his eyes signaling that time was of the essence. "This is a contact of mine. They can help you hide, but don't trust anyone. Not even each other." With that, Jake turned and melted into the crowd, leaving us to digest the whirlwind of information. I felt the weight of uncertainty crash down on me, drowning out the noise of the bar. The past was not just a collection of memories, it was a living, breathing entity that threatened to consume us. "We need to go," Alex said, urgency creeping into his voice. I nodded, heart pounding as we stood to leave. The room felt suffocating, shadows flickering around us like predators waiting to pounce. As we navigated through the crowd, I couldn't shake the feeling that danger lurked just beyond our sight, ready to strike. Once outside, the cool night air hit me like a breath of fresh air, but the tension still gripped my chest. "What now?" I asked, glancing around for any sign of trouble. "We go to the contact Jake mentioned," Alex replied, his voice steady. "It's the only option we have left." As we slipped into the night, I felt the weight of our decision settle over us. We were stepping deeper into a world that was foreign and terrifying, yet I knew I couldn't turn back now. The threads of our past had woven a complex tapestry, and it was time to unravel it. The night wrapped around us like a thick fog as we drove through the winding streets, shadows flickering past the car windows. My heart raced, the urgency of the situation hammering in my chest like a wild drum. I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see a set of headlights tailing us, but the road behind was empty, just dark and still. "Do you have any idea what this contact is like?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, laced with trepidation. The looming threat of being hunted weighed heavily on my mind. Alex tightened his grip on the steering wheel, his knuckles white under the streetlights. "No, not really. I only met him once, a long time ago. He's a bit of a recluse. You'll know him by his tattoos. He covers nearly every inch of his arms." "Great," I replied, biting my lip. "We're looking for a tattooed recluse in the dark. Just what we need. He might be a recluse, but he's got connections. If anyone knows how to stay off the radar, it's him," Alex said, glancing over at me. "We just need to be cautious. He operates in a gray area, and he doesn't trust easily." "Yeah, well, neither do I," I muttered, anxiety clawing at my insides. The streets grew quieter as we approached the outskirts of town, the glow of city lights fading into a hazy darkness. The air was thick with anticipation, and I could feel the tension between us, a shared fear of the unknown. Eventually, we pulled up to an old warehouse, its windows boarded up and its exterior cloaked in shadows. The sign outside was barely legible, its paint peeling and faded. "This is it," Alex said, his voice steady, though I could hear the underlying current of nervousness. I stepped out of the car, the cool night air biting at my skin. The warehouse loomed before us, an imposing structure that felt both eerie and inviting in its own way. "Are you sure he's here?" I asked, doubt creeping into my thoughts. "We don't have many options left," Alex replied. "We need to take this chance." As we approached the heavy metal door, I felt a mix of excitement and dread swirling within me. What if this was a mistake? What if the contact turned out to be dangerous? But I couldn't back down now. The consequences of my past were closing in, and I needed to confront them head on. Alex knocked on the door, the sound echoing ominously in the stillness. We waited, tension thick in the air. After a moment, the door creaked open, revealing a tall man covered in tattoos, the intricate designs snaking around his arms like living art. His eyes were piercing, and he regarded us with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "Who are you?" he demanded, crossing his arms over his chest. His voice was gravelly, each word dripping with skepticism. "Jake sent us," Alex replied, his tone measured. "We need your help." The man's eyes narrowed, assessing us. "Jake? He doesn't send just anyone. What do you want?" I stepped forward, trying to appear more confident than I felt. "We're in trouble. We need to stay off the radar for a while. We were told you could help." He studied us for a long moment, a flicker of understanding crossing his face. "All right, come in. But you better have a good reason for putting your lives in my hands." As we stepped inside, the interior was dimly lit, a stark contrast to the darkness outside. The space was cluttered with old furniture and scattered remnants of past projects, sketches, tattoo supplies, and odd trinkets that gave the place a chaotic yet strangely inviting atmosphere. "Take a seat," the tattooed man said, gesturing toward a worn couch. He moved to a nearby table, where a kettle was boiling. "You look like you could use some coffee. What's your name?" "Marcus," I replied, sinking onto the couch, relief washing over me as I felt the tension of the night begin to ebb. "And this is Alex." "Nice to meet you, Marcus." "Alex," he said, pouring coffee into 2 chipped mugs. "I'm Leo." As he handed us the mugs, I took a moment to study him. Leo was a man who had lived many lives, his tattoos telling stories of rebellion and resilience. There was an intensity in his gaze, a knowing that hinted at dark experiences. "What kind of trouble are you in?" he asked, settling across from us, his demeanor shifting from suspicion to genuine curiosity. I glanced at Alex before answering. "We've been receiving threats from someone connected to our past. They're dangerous and won't stop until they find what they're looking for." Leo leaned back, fingers steepled under his chin. "And what is it they're looking for? Information? A person? Or something more personal?" "They're looking for me," I admitted, the weight of the confession heavy in the air. "I made mistakes, and now it feels like those mistakes are coming back to haunt me." "Everyone has a past," Leo replied, his voice low. "But not everyone has the courage to face it. You need to understand, running will only delay the inevitable. You need to confront whatever it is that's haunting you." "Confront it how?" I asked, feeling a mix of fear and anger. "I can't just go back to the past and fix my mistakes." Leo's gaze pierced through me. "Maybe not fix, but understand. You need to find out who's after you and why. That's the only way to truly escape this." I felt the enormity of his words settle over me like a heavy blanket. What did I even know about the people from my past? I had buried those memories deep, wanting nothing more than to forget. But now, they were surfacing, and I had no choice but to confront them. "Do you have any leads?" Alex asked, breaking the silence, his voice steady. Leo nodded, leaning forward. "I have my connections. But you need to be prepared. This isn't going to be easy, and it might lead you down some dark paths. Are you willing to risk that?" "Yes," I replied, the conviction in my voice surprising me. "I'm ready to face whatever comes next." "Good," Leo said, a small smile creeping onto his lips. "Then let's get started. The first step is to dig into your past, find out who you were involved with and who might want to hurt you. But remember, the deeper you dig, the more you'll uncover." With that, Leo began to outline a plan, guiding us through the complexities of my past and the connections that might have been left behind. Each name he mentioned brought forth a flood of memories, faces I hadn't thought of in years, whispers of conversations long forgotten. As the night wore on, I felt a strange sense of empowerment mixing with my fear. I was finally taking action, no longer just a passive victim of my past. But with every piece of information Leo provided, the weight of my choices loomed larger. The thrill of uncertainty wrapped around us, and I knew this was only the beginning. I was stepping into a storm, and I would have to navigate the chaos that awaited. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, marking the passage of time as we sat in Leo's dimly lit warehouse, surrounded by the remnants of his life. Each tick felt like a countdown, heightening the tension in the air. The scent of coffee hung in the room, mingling with the faint scent of ink and metal from Leo's tattoo supplies. I could feel my heart beating faster as he prepared to unearth the skeletons of my past. "All right, Marcus," Leo began, leaning forward with an intensity that demanded my full attention. "Tell me everything you can remember about your past relationships, friends, acquaintances, anyone you think might have a reason to come after you." I hesitated, the memories swirling in my mind like fog. I had a group of friends back in college. We were inseparable, always getting into trouble, but we eventually drifted apart. I thought I'd left all that behind. Names, Leo prompted, his voice steady but urgent. Do you mean names? Tom, Sarah, and Lily, I said, feeling a mix of nostalgia and regret. We were close, but things changed after that incident. The incident? Alex pressed, leaning in. What happened? I took a deep breath, the weight of the past bearing down on me. We were involved in something stupid, some petty theft. It escalated, and we ended up getting caught. I took the blame to protect the others. After that, everything fell apart. Tom disappeared, Sarah moved away, and Lily, she was never the same. I tried to reach out, but they all cut ties with me. Sounds like you made some enemies, Leo remarked, jotting down the names in a small notepad. If any of them felt betrayed, they might have reason to come back into your life now. Do you think they would? I asked, a knot tightening in my stomach. People can be unpredictable, especially when their past is threatened, Leo replied, his tone serious. We'll start by tracking them down. But you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that they might not be the same people you remember. I can handle that, I said, though a part of me quivered with doubt. Just tell me what to do. First, we need to find out if any of them have been active in the last few years, Leo said, flipping through the pages of his notepad. I have a few contacts who might know where to look. But we'll need to be discreet. If word gets out that you're asking about them, it could tip them off. Where do we start? Alex asked, his tone brisk, as if eager to move forward. Let's try the local bars and clubs. People talk when they're drinking, and we might find someone who's still in touch with them, Leo suggested, glancing at us. But we need to be careful. I can't promise that they won't get suspicious or that they'll even be willing to talk to you. Whatever it takes, I replied, a mix of fear and determination igniting within me. I'm ready to do this. Leo nodded, the hint of approval in his expression. All right, let's get moving. As we stepped back into the night, the air felt charged with possibility. My heart raced with the thrill of action, yet a gnawing anxiety tugged at me. Each step felt like a plunge into the unknown, a journey back into a world I had long tried to escape. The streets were eerily quiet as we drove, the headlights cutting through the darkness like knives. I felt a sense of foreboding with every turn, as if unseen eyes were watching us, waiting to pounce. Our first stop was a small bar named the Midnight Owl, a dive where the past and present mingled among the smoky haze. As we entered, the familiar smell of cheap beer and fried food enveloped us, a mix of laughter and hushed conversations filling the air. Stay close, Leo said, scanning the room. We'll split up and see if we can find anyone who might have information. I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. I felt out of place, like a ghost returning to haunt familiar haunts. I made my way to the bar, my eyes darting around, searching for a face from my past. The bartender, a middle-aged man with a weary expression, wiped down the counter as I approached. What can I get you? He asked, his voice roughened by years of late nights. A beer, please, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. As I waited, I surveyed the room. A group of young people huddled together at a table, their laughter spilling into the air. In another corner, an older man sat alone, nursing a drink, his eyes flickering with the remnants of better days. I scanned the faces, looking for any glimmer of recognition. Alex was already deep in conversation with a couple of patrons at the other end of the bar. I could see Leo talking to a man with tattoos creeping up his neck, gesturing animatedly. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves as I leaned against the bar. Suddenly, a voice broke through the din, sharp and familiar. "Marcus? Is that you?" I turned, my heart racing as I faced a figure from my past. Tom stood before me, his expression a mix of surprise and disbelief. Time had changed him. He looked older, wearier, the spark of mischief in his eyes replaced by something darker. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice tinged with confusion. "I could ask you the same thing," I replied, trying to keep my composure. "I need to talk to you." "About what?" "The old days? We left that behind, remember?" His tone was defensive, and I could see the walls going up around him. "This isn't about the past, Tom. It's about now," I said, urgency threading through my words. "I'm in trouble. Someone is after me, and I need to know if you've heard anything." "About Sarah or Lily?" His expression shifted, a flicker of concern breaking through the surface. "I haven't talked to them in years." "Why would they be involved in your mess?" "Because my mess is our mess," I insisted, desperation creeping into my voice. "If they're connected to this somehow, I need to know." Tom hesitated, glancing around as if searching for eavesdroppers. "Let's go outside," he said finally, his tone shifting. I nodded, relief flooding through me as we stepped into the cool night air. The sounds of the bar faded behind us, replaced by the distant hum of traffic and the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. "What's really going on, Marcus?" Tom asked, crossing his arms defensively. "You can't just waltz back into my life and expect me to help you. I know it's complicated, but I have no one else to turn to. I made mistakes, and now those mistakes are coming back to haunt me," I confessed, the weight of the truth pressing down on me. He studied me, his expression softening slightly. "I know we had our issues, but I never thought it would come to this. I didn't even know you were back in town. Things changed, Tom. I thought I could leave it all behind, but it looks like that's not the case," I replied, my voice earnest. "I need your help to find Sarah and Lily. They might know something." He sighed, running a hand through his hair, the tension in his shoulders easing just a fraction. "I don't know if I can get in touch with them, but I might have a lead on Sarah. She was living in a small town not far from here a couple of years ago. I can give you the address." "Please, that would help a lot," I said, hope igniting within me. "I have to find her, Tom. It's a matter of life and death." He pulled out his phone, typing furiously for a moment before looking up. "Here. It's not much, but it's a start." He handed me a slip of paper with an address scrawled on it. "Thank you," I said, a wave of gratitude washing over me. "But you need to be careful," Tom warned, his expression turning serious. "If they're after you, they could come after me too. I don't want to get dragged back into your mess." "I understand," I replied, sincerity in my tone. "But I need to face this. I can't run away anymore." Tom nodded slowly, as if weighing his options. "Just be smart about this. If you find anything out, don't get too close. It's not just your life at stake anymore." We stood there for a moment, the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. Despite our rocky past, a flicker of camaraderie ignited in me. "I won't forget this, Tom," I said, determination flooding my voice. He nodded, giving me a brief, tight-lipped smile before turning to head back inside. I watched him go, feeling a mixture of hope and dread swirling within me. As I turned to rejoin Alex and Leo, My heart raced. We were one step closer to unraveling the threads of my past, but I knew that each step forward would come with its own dangers. "Did you find anything?" Alex asked as I approached, concern etched on his face. "I got an address for Sarah," I said, holding out the slip of paper. "We're going to track her down next." "Great work," Leo said, his approval palpable. "But remember, this is only the beginning. We're playing with fire, and it might burn us if we're not careful." With the address burning a hole in my pocket, I felt a sense of purpose settle over me. The ghosts of my past were beginning to surface, and I would confront them head on, no matter what it took. The next morning, I awoke with a renewed sense of purpose, though the weight of uncertainty still pressed down on me. The address Tom had given me felt like a lifeline, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I was treading into dangerous waters. I had no idea how deeply entwined my past was with the present or what shadows lingered just out of sight. The sun barely peeked through the curtains as I pulled on a pair of jeans and a worn hoodie, the fabric comforting against my skin. I glanced at the clock, just after 8. Alex and Leo were still sleeping, so I decided to leave a note before heading out. "Gone to find Sarah. Be back soon. I folded the paper neatly and placed it on the table, a sense of finality washing over me. As I stepped outside, the crisp morning air invigorated my senses, and I took a deep breath, inhaling the faint scent of damp earth and the promise of a new day. The drive to the address Tom had provided was uneventful, the familiar streets of my town passing by like a film reel of my life. Each intersection brought back memories, flashes of laughter, heartache, and regret that had shaped who I was. I pushed them aside, focusing on the road ahead. The small town of Millfield emerged on the horizon, a quaint place that felt trapped in time. The storefronts were a mix of rustic charm and neglect, some boarded up while others seemed to thrive under new ownership. I felt a strange sense of nostalgia wash over me. This was a place I once visited with my friends, a backdrop to careless days and reckless choices. The address led me to a modest house nestled between two larger homes, its paint peeling and the garden overgrown with weeds. It looked abandoned, but a flicker of hope ignited in my chest. Maybe she's here, I thought, a rush of adrenaline coursing through my veins. I stepped onto the creaky wooden porch, each board protesting under my weight. Taking a deep breath, I knocked on the door, the sound echoing in the stillness. A moment passed, and then another. Just as I was about to turn away, the door creaked open slightly, revealing a woman's face, weary but undeniably familiar. "Sarah?" I asked, hope lacing my voice. "Marcus," she replied, her brow furrowing in confusion. "Yeah, it's me," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. "I'm looking for you. Can we talk?" She hesitated, glancing back into the house before stepping onto the porch and closing the door behind her. "What's this about? I haven't heard from you in years." "I know," I replied, my heart racing. "I came to find you because I need your help. There's something going on, something dangerous." She crossed her arms defensively, her expression shifting to concern. "Dangerous? What are you talking about?" "Someone is calling me, digging up the past. I think it's related to that incident we were involved in back in college," I explained, searching her eyes for understanding. "I don't know who it is or why they're doing this, but I can't do it alone." For a moment, Sarah remained silent, her gaze flickering to the ground. I could see the wheels turning in her mind, the memories we shared flooding back. Finally, she looked up, her expression softening just a fraction. "I thought we left all that behind." "I thought so too," I admitted, frustration creeping into my voice. But it seems like the past is coming back to haunt us, and I need to know if you've heard anything from Tom or Lily. Her expression darkened. I haven't talked to either of them in years. Tom and I had a falling out, and Lily, well, she just vanished after everything. Do you remember anything about where they might have gone? Any old connections? I pressed, feeling the urgency in my voice. Sarah bit her lip, her brow furrowed. The last I heard, Tom was working at a bar in the next town over, but I don't think he'd want to see me again. And Lily? I don't know. She was always so secretive. Please, I said, desperation leaking into my tone. I'm running out of time, and I feel like I'm being watched. If you know anything, now is the time to tell me. She sighed, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. I can give you Tom's number. Maybe he'll listen to you. I just can't promise he'll want to talk. Anything helps, I said, relief flooding through me. Sarah stepped back inside the house, returning a moment later with a slip of paper. Here's his number. Just be careful. You don't know what he's been through. None of us do. Thanks, Sarah, I said, taking the paper and pocketing it. I appreciate it. Just don't drag me back into whatever this is, she warned, her eyes narrowing. I have a life here now. I won't, I promised, guilt gnawing at me. But I have to get to the bottom of this. As I turned to leave, Sarah called out, Marcus. I paused, looking back at her. Yeah? Whatever happens, just remember that we all made mistakes. We were young and stupid. Don't let the past consume you. I won't forget, I replied, a wave of gratitude washing over me. I climbed back into my car, the weight of the world pressing down on my shoulders. With Tom's number now in my possession, I felt one step closer to confronting the shadows of my past. The drive back to town was a blur of thoughts and emotions. I needed to call Tom, but I was uncertain of what to say. What if he refused to talk? What if he didn't believe me? The stakes felt higher than ever. Pulling over at a small rest area, I took a moment to collect myself. The air was crisp, filled with the faint scent of pine and damp earth. I glanced at the number scribbled on the paper before dialing, my heart racing in my chest. The phone rang twice before Tom answered. Yeah? His voice was flat, guarded. It's me, Marcus, I said, trying to keep my tone steady. I found Sarah, and she gave me her number. There was a pause, and I could practically hear the gears turning in his head. What do you want? I'm in trouble, Tom. Someone's been calling me, reminding me of our past mistakes. I need to know if you've heard anything from Lily or if you have any idea who could be behind this. Tom's silence stretched on, the tension palpable through the phone. Why should I help you? He finally replied, bitterness lacing his words. Because it's bigger than us now, I said, urgency creeping into my voice. If they're coming after me, they could come after you too. I don't want anyone to get hurt. Fine, he muttered, his tone shifting. Meet me at the old diner. We can talk there, but I'm not promising anything. Thank you, I said, relief flooding through me. I'll be there. I ended the call, the weight of the world still pressing down on me, but now accompanied by a flicker of hope. The old diner was a relic of the past, a place where laughter and friendship once thrived over greasy plates of food and endless cups of coffee. I could almost feel the echoes of our youthful days as I drove toward it. The diner sat at the edge of town, its neon sign flickering like a heartbeat. As I pulled into the parking lot, I felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. I stepped inside, the familiar scent of fried food and burnt coffee wrapping around me like an old blanket. The diner was nearly empty, save for a few patrons scattered around. I spotted Tom in a booth at the far end, his expression a mix of skepticism and wariness as he looked up at me. "Thanks for meeting me," I said, sliding into the booth across from him. "Let's get to it," he said, folding his arms defensively. "What do you think is going on?" "I think someone is trying to dig up our past," I replied, my voice low. "I've been getting calls, someone knows what we did, and they're not afraid to remind me." Tom leaned back, skepticism etched on his face. "And you think it's related to Lily?" "I don't know," I admitted, the weight of uncertainty settling heavily in my chest. "But it feels like it's connected somehow. She disappeared after everything went down." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I haven't heard from her since that night. It's like she just vanished." "Do you remember what she said before she left?" I pressed. "Any clues? Anything at all?" Tom's brow furrowed in thought. "She was always secretive. But she mentioned something about needing to get away, to escape her past. I thought she was just being dramatic. Do you think she could be involved in this?" I asked, fear creeping into my voice. "I doubt it," Tom replied, shaking his head. "But if someone's threatening you, they could be using her as leverage. We need to figure out what happened to her." As we spoke, I noticed a figure sitting at the counter, their face obscured by a newspaper. Something about them felt off, a prickle of unease creeping up my spine. I tried to shake it off, but my instincts told me to be wary. "Marcus, you okay?" Tom asked, snapping me back to reality. "Yeah, just had a weird feeling," I said, trying to play it off. "Listen," Tom said, leaning in closer. "If this is about Lily, we need to find her. She could be the key to everything." "Agreed," I replied, my mind racing. "But how?" "We have no leads." "We'll figure it out," he said, determination hardening his gaze. "But we need to be careful. Whoever's behind this won't hesitate to hurt us if they think we're getting too close." I nodded, the gravity of our situation sinking in. We were diving headfirst into a web of secrets and lies, and the danger was only beginning to unravel. As I took a sip of my coffee, the figure at the counter shifted, their gaze locking onto mine. A chill ran down my spine. Had they been listening? The moment the stranger's gaze met mine, I felt a rush of adrenaline flood my veins. It was as if the air had thickened, wrapping around me like a suffocating fog. The figure remained still, the newspaper masking their features, but an unsettling energy radiated from them. "Marcus, you with me?" Tom's voice cut through the tension, bringing my focus back to him. "Yeah, I started, but the stranger was gone." I blinked, and in an instant, they had vanished, leaving only an empty seat behind. "Just what?" Tom asked, his brows furrowing. "Nothing," I said, shaking my head as I tried to dispel the unease. "I thought I saw someone I knew." "Someone you know?" Tom replied skeptically. "In a place like this? You sure you're not imagining things?" "No, I'm serious," I insisted, my voice rising slightly. It felt off, like they were watching us. Tom leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "Okay, let's focus. We can't let distractions sidetrack us. What's our next move? I took a deep breath, attempting to steady my racing heart. We need to find out if anyone else has seen Lily. I could go to the old campus and ask around. Maybe someone knows something. Sounds good, Tom replied, nodding. But let's not go alone. I'll come with you. If whoever is behind this is watching, we need to be on our guard. Agreed, I said, relief washing over me. Having him by my side felt reassuring, even if I wasn't entirely sure how deep this rabbit hole would go. We paid for our coffee and exited the diner, the cool air hitting us like a slap. The sky was an ominous shade of gray, thick clouds rolling in, promising rain. As we climbed into my car, the weight of the unknown loomed large, threatening to consume us. The drive to the old campus was filled with a silence heavy with tension. I could feel Tom's gaze shifting to me frequently, as if gauging my reaction to our plan. The memories of our college days washed over me, the laughter, the friendships, the decisions that had led us to this moment. It felt surreal to be returning after all this time, but a sense of duty propelled me forward. As we parked near the entrance, I noticed that the campus had aged. The once vibrant trees had grown taller and gnarled, and the buildings bore the weight of neglect. The air was thick with memories, both beautiful and haunting. I glanced at Tom, whose expression mirrored my own, nostalgia tinged with dread. We should start at the student center, I suggested, leading the way toward the familiar building. It had been a hub of activity, filled with laughter and chatter. Now, it felt like a ghost town, the few students milling about seeming preoccupied, their heads buried in phones and books. As we entered, I was hit by a wave of familiarity, the scent of coffee and stale pastries mingling in the air. I looked around, searching for anyone who might remember Lily. Tom leaned against the wall, scanning the room with a mix of impatience and concern. "Who do you think we should ask?" he said, breaking the silence. "Let's start with the barista," I replied, spotting a girl behind the counter. She looked to be in her early 20s, her dark hair tied in a messy bun, and her name tag read Emma. I approached the counter, trying to mask my nervousness. "Hey, do you remember a girl named Lily? She used to come here a lot a few years ago." Emma's eyes flickered with recognition, and she paused, wiping her hands on her apron. "Lily? Yeah, I remember her. She was always friendly." "Why?" "She's been missing," I said, my heart racing. "We're trying to find out what happened to her. Do you know where she went after she left school?" Emma frowned, her brows knitting together. "I haven't seen her in ages. But I heard she moved away, maybe to the city. She got really involved in some interesting activities before she left. There were whispers, you know?" "Whispers?" Tom interjected, stepping closer. "What kind of activities?" Emma glanced around, lowering her voice. "I don't want to spread rumors, but there were talks about her getting mixed up with some unsavory people. Some of us were worried about her." A chill ran down my spine. "Did you ever see her with anyone specific? Anyone who seemed dangerous?" She hesitated, biting her lip. "There was a guy. I think his name was Derek or something. He would come in and sit with her. They were close, but I always got a bad vibe from him. He didn't seem right. Do you know where I can find him?" I asked, urgency creeping into my voice. Emma shook her head. "I don't know. He didn't come around much after she left. Maybe try the bars in town? He might be there." "Thanks, Emma," I said, feeling the pieces start to come together. You've been really helpful. As we turned to leave, I caught sight of the figure from the diner, standing just outside the entrance, shrouded in shadows. My heart raced as recognition hit me. It was the same person. They seemed to be watching us intently, their face still obscured. "Tom, look," I whispered, nudging him with my elbow. He followed my gaze, his expression hardening. "Let's get out of here," he said urgently. We stepped outside, and I quickly scanned the area, but the figure had vanished into the crowd. The ominous feeling returned, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. "Did you see that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah, I did," Tom replied, a flicker of concern in his eyes. "We need to move fast." Whoever that was is clearly interested in what we're doing. "Let's head to the bar," I said, my mind racing. We can't let this stop us now. As we climbed back into the car, the weight of the shadows from our past felt heavier than ever. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, determination flooding my veins. We were on the brink of uncovering something monumental, and I couldn't let fear hold us back. The drive to the bar felt like a race against time, my heart pounding in rhythm with the engine's roar. The streets blurred by, each turn taking us deeper into a world I had thought I'd left behind, a world where shadows lurked in every corner and the air crackled with danger. As we pulled into the parking lot of the Rusty Nail, an unassuming dive tucked away at the edge of town, I felt a mix of anticipation and dread. This place had always been a haven for those seeking solace in their drinks, but tonight it felt different, charged with the weight of our search for Lily and the lurking threat of the unknown. We stepped inside, the dim lighting casting long shadows that danced across the walls. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses filled the air, but a heaviness lingered, as if the bar itself was holding its breath. I scanned the room, searching for any sign of Derek or anyone who might have known Lily. "Let's start by talking to the bartender," Tom suggested, motioning toward a burly man behind the counter. His name tag read Rick, and he was busy pouring drinks, his demeanor relaxed yet observant. "Excuse me," I called out, making my way to the bar. "Do you remember a girl named Lily? She used to come in here a lot a few years ago?" Rick looked up, his brow furrowing as he considered my question. "Lily? Sure, I remember her. She was a regular. Good girl, but she had some strange friends." "Strange friends?" I echoed, trying to hide my urgency. "Can you tell me more?" Rick leaned in, lowering his voice. "She started hanging around with this guy named Derek. Always talking about some underground scene, art shows, music festivals, things that didn't sit right with most folks. Then one day, she just vanished. Do you know where I can find Derek?" I pressed, leaning closer. He hesitated, glancing around as if checking for prying ears. "I think he still comes here sometimes. Last I heard, he was living over on Cedar Street. But you might want to be careful. People like him don't take kindly to nosy strangers." "Thanks," I said, feeling a knot of determination tighten in my stomach. "That helps a lot." Tom and I stepped away from the bar, the weight of Rick's words hanging in the air. "Cedar Street," I muttered. "That's not too far from here. We should check it out." As we made our way to the exit, I caught a glimpse of a familiar face in the crowd. My breath caught in my throat. It was the stranger from the diner, sitting at a table in the corner, their face partially obscured by the shadows. "Tom, we need to go." "Now," I urged, panic rising in my chest. "Why?" he asked, but I didn't have time to explain. The figure was watching us, their eyes boring into me like a predator sizing up its prey. We rushed out of the bar and into the night, the cool air hitting me like a slap. What the hell was that about? Tom demanded, urgency lacing his voice. I don't know, but they've been following us, I said, glancing over my shoulder. We need to get to Cedar Street before they catch up. The drive felt like a blur, each second stretching into eternity. As we turned onto Cedar Street, a sense of foreboding settled over me. The houses were old and run down, their windows darkened like the hollow eyes of long-forgotten memories. There's a light on up ahead, Tom pointed out, and I squinted through the windshield, my heart racing at the sight of a flickering bulb illuminating one of the homes. We parked and cautiously approached the door, my instinct screaming that we were stepping into a trap. I knocked softly, my heart pounding in my ears. A few tense moments passed before a voice called from within, gruff yet cautious. Who is it? It's Marcus, I said, hoping my voice didn't betray my nerves. I'm looking for Derek. The door creaked open, revealing a disheveled man with unkempt hair and eyes that gleamed with an unsettling mixture of fear and suspicion. What do you want with him? He asked, his voice low. I need to talk to him about Lily, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. A flicker of recognition crossed his face, and he stepped aside, allowing us to enter. The interior was dimly lit and cluttered, the air thick with the scent of stale cigarettes and something else, something metallic and sharp. Derek, the man called, raising his voice. You got visitors. We exchanged glances, tension crackling between us as we waited. A few moments later, a figure appeared from the shadows, a tall man with piercing eyes and a guarded demeanor. Who are you? Derek asked, his voice cold and sharp. I'm Marcus, I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. I'm looking for Lily. I heard you knew her. Derek's expression hardened, his gaze narrowing. What do you want to know about her? She's missing, I pressed. And I think you might know something about what happened. A flicker of something, regret, perhaps, crossed his features, but it vanished almost as quickly as it appeared. I don't know anything. She made her choices. Choices? I echoed, anger rising within me. What did you do to her? Derek took a step back, crossing his arms defensively. I didn't do anything. She was looking for something more, something beyond this life. I warned her to stay away from certain people, but she didn't listen. Who are these people? Tom interjected, stepping closer. I don't know, Derek snapped, frustration seeping into his tone. She got involved in something she couldn't handle. She was searching for answers, but what she found, it wasn't meant for her. What does that mean? I pressed, desperation creeping into my voice. Just leave it alone, man, Derek said, backing away as if the very topic scared him. You're asking for trouble. Just then, a loud crash echoed from outside, followed by shouts and the sound of footsteps. My heart raced as I exchanged a worried glance with Tom. We have to get out of here, I said, adrenaline surging through me. Now. We turned to leave, but before we could reach the door, a group of men stormed into the room, their faces obscured by the dim light. I felt my heart drop. These were the unsavory people Rick had warned us about. Derek. We warned you to stay out of our business, one of them growled, advancing toward us. Run. I shouted, grabbing Tom's arm as we bolted for the back door. We barreled through the kitchen, the men's voices growing louder behind us. As we burst into the alley, I could hear footsteps pounding behind us, but we didn't dare look back. We sprinted down the narrow passage, the night air heavy with the smell of rain and adrenaline. Where do we go? Tom gasped, glancing over his shoulder. Anywhere but here, I shouted, pushing myself to run faster. We need to find a place to hide. We ducked into a narrow side street, our breaths coming in ragged gasps. I pressed my back against the cold brick wall, straining to hear any sounds from behind us. Do you think they saw us? Tom whispered, fear lacing his voice. I don't know, I admitted, trying to calm my racing heart. But we can't stay here. We need to figure out our next move. Just then, my phone buzzed in my pocket, sending a jolt of anxiety through me. I fished it out, glancing at the screen, an unknown number. My heart raced as I answered, my voice trembling. Hello? Marcus, a voice hissed on the other end, chilling my blood. I know what you're looking for. But if you want to find Lily, you need to be ready for the truth. The voice on the other end sent a shiver down my spine, each word laced with a sinister undertone. I know what you're looking for. But if you want to find Lily, you need to be ready for the truth. Who is this? I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady despite the fear bubbling within me. Someone who can help you, the voice replied, low and gravelly. But you need to come alone. Tonight. To the old warehouse by the docks. Midnight. Or you'll never find her. Before I could respond, the line went dead, leaving me standing in the dark alley, my heart pounding in my chest. The implications of what I had just heard weighed heavily on me. What was that? Tom asked, his eyes wide with concern. I don't know, I said, my voice shaking slightly. But they said they know where Lily is. Do you really think it's a good idea to go? It could be a trap, he warned, glancing back toward the street as if expecting the shadows to close in on us. I have to go, I replied, determination hardening my resolve. We're running out of time. Whoever this is may have information we need. I can't let fear hold me back. Okay, Tom said, reluctantly. But I'm not letting you go alone. If we're walking into a trap, we need to stick together. I nodded, grateful for his unwavering support. All right. We'll go together, but we need to be careful. As we made our way back to my car, the adrenaline coursed through my veins, heightening every sound and shadow around us. The streets felt eerily quiet, the usual hustle of the town replaced by an unsettling stillness. Driving through the darkened streets, I felt the weight of our mission pressing down on me. The docks loomed ahead, their silhouette cutting against the moonlit sky. The old warehouse was a relic of a time long forgotten, a place where shadows whispered secrets, and the air was thick with the scent of salt and decay. When we arrived, I parked in a secluded spot, the dim light barely illuminating the weathered structure. This is it, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Are you sure about this? Tom asked, his brow furrowed with concern. Not really, I admitted, taking a deep breath. But we have to find out what's happening. For Lily. We stepped out of the car, the cool air biting against our skin as we approached the warehouse. The creaking of old wood echoed around us, each sound magnified in the stillness of the night. I glanced at Tom, who was scanning our surroundings, his posture tense and alert. As we reached the entrance, I hesitated. Do you hear that? I asked, straining to listen. A faint noise echoed from inside, voices, low and urgent. My heart raced as I pushed the door open, the rusty hinges groaning in protest. We stepped into the dimly lit space, the air stale and thick with the scent of mildew. The interior was a maze of crates and shadows, and I could barely make out figures gathered at the far end of the room. My heart sank as I recognized one of them, Derek, standing with a group of men, their faces shrouded in darkness. "Marcus, over here," Derek called out, his voice carrying a strange mix of urgency and caution. I glanced at Tom, who looked equally apprehensive. "This doesn't feel right," he whispered. "Stay close," I replied, stepping further inside. The atmosphere was electric, charged with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "Glad you could make it," Derek said as we approached. "I wasn't sure you'd come. Why did you bring us here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the rising anxiety in my chest. "I wanted to warn you," he replied, glancing around as if ensuring no one was listening. "There are people looking for you. For both of you. The ones who took Lily." "What do you mean?" Tom interjected, his voice edged with disbelief. "You know who took her?" "I have some information," Derek said, lowering his voice even more. "But it's dangerous. These people are part of something bigger, something you can't comprehend." "Try me," I said, frustration boiling beneath my surface. "We've come this far. I'm not backing down now." Derek sighed, running a hand through his hair. "All right. But you need to understand that once you know, there's no turning back. The truth will change everything. Just tell us," I urged, feeling the pressure mount. He hesitated, glancing back at the group of men behind him. "There's a reason Lily got involved with us. She was searching for something, a way to connect with the past, to understand what had happened to her family. But she went too deep, and now they're coming for you. They believe you have something she left behind." "What are you talking about?" I pressed, confusion mixing with anxiety. "Lily found something, a record, a document, something that could expose them. She thought it would help her, but it only put her in danger. They know you're looking for her, and they'll do anything to keep their secrets hidden." "Who are they?" Tom asked, his voice low and tense. "They call themselves the Order of the Lost," Derek said, his face grim. "They've been operating in the shadows for years, manipulating events, covering their tracks. And if you're not careful, you'll end up like her, lost in their web." A chilling silence enveloped us as the weight of Derek's words settled in. "Why didn't you tell us this before?" I asked, anger flaring. "Because I didn't think you'd believe me," he shot back defensively. "And I didn't want to drag you into this mess. But now you're in too deep." "Then help us," I pleaded. "Where do we find her? How do we stop this?" Derek hesitated, glancing back at the men in the shadows, who were now moving closer. "I can give you a lead, but you have to be ready to fight. They won't let you leave without a fight." Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. The men surrounding us began to close in, their expressions hardening into something menacing. "Looks like we have company," Derek muttered, his voice low. "We need to move, now." As the first blow landed, chaos erupted. Tom and I fought to escape the encroaching figures, adrenaline surging through my veins as we dodged fists and shouts. "Back to the exit," I shouted, pushing through the throng, my heart racing. We scrambled through the warehouse, the darkness closing in around us as we searched for a way out. "Go! Go!" Tom yelled, urgency lacing his voice as we sprinted toward the exit, the sounds of pursuit echoing behind us. With a final push, we burst through the door and into the cool night air, racing toward my car. "Get in!" I yelled, fumbling for the keys as Tom dove into the passenger seat. I slid into the driver's seat and started the engine, my hands trembling as I gripped the wheel. As we sped away from the warehouse, my heart was still racing. But in the back of my mind, the weight of Derek's revelation lingered, a dark shadow threatening to engulf us. We had ventured into a dangerous territory, and the truth about Lily was still just out of reach. But one thing was clear, this was only the beginning. The engine roared to life, and I slammed the accelerator to the floor, the tires screeching as we sped away from the warehouse. My heart was racing, fueled by adrenaline and fear, but my mind raced even faster, processing the gravity of Derek's words. The Order of the Lost, a name that echoed like a death knell in my mind. "Where do we go now?" Tom asked, his voice tense as he turned to look back through the rear window. "Do you think they followed us?" "I don't know," I replied, glancing nervously at the road ahead. "But we can't go back home. They'll be looking for us there." "Maybe we should go to the police," he suggested, anxiety creeping into his voice. "They might be able to help us." "Help us?" I scoffed, the bitterness bubbling up. "You heard Derek. The police could be compromised. We're better off figuring this out ourselves." Tom was silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, but we need a plan. We can't just run forever." "Right," I said, trying to steady my racing heart. "We need to find out what Lily uncovered. Maybe it's the key to stopping this." We drove in silence, the weight of our situation hanging heavy in the air. The streets blurred past, the streetlights casting eerie shadows that danced across the windshield. My mind flicked through the memories of Lily, the last time I'd seen her, her laughter ringing in my ears, her determination to find her truth. Finally, I turned onto a side road, heading toward Hawthorne Park, a place I knew she used to frequent. Maybe she left something there, a clue hidden in a place that had once brought her solace. As we parked under a canopy of trees, the moonlight filtered through the leaves, casting a silvery glow on the ground. "What are we looking for?" Tom asked, stepping out of the car and looking around. "I don't know," I admitted, feeling a strange sense of déjà vu, but this place held a lot of meaning for her. Maybe it's where she felt safe enough to search for answers. We walked along the winding paths, the sound of rustling leaves echoing in the stillness. I felt a deep sense of loss as I remembered the laughter we had shared here, the dreams we had woven together. But now, those memories felt tainted, overshadowed by the dark reality we faced. "Wait," I said suddenly, halting in my tracks. "The old gazebo." She loved sitting there. We made our way to the gazebo, its wooden structure creaking softly in the night air. I scanned the area, looking for anything out of the ordinary. As we approached, I noticed something glinting in the moonlight, a small metallic object partially buried in the dirt. "Look!" I exclaimed, bending down to retrieve it. It was a key, ornate and old, with intricate designs etched into its surface. "What do you think it unlocks?" Tom asked, crouching beside me. "I have no idea," I said, turning the key over in my hand. "But it must mean something to her. It could be the lead we've been looking for." Just then, my phone buzzed again, startling me. I fumbled to pull it out, my breath catching when I saw the unknown number flashing on the screen. "Who is it now?" Tom asked, his eyes narrowing. "I don't know," I said, my heart pounding as I answered. "Hello?" Marcus, the same gravelly voice from before spoke, sending a chill down my spine. "You shouldn't have gone to the warehouse. They're watching you. You need to be careful." "Why are you warning me?" I shot back, anger flaring. What do you want from me?" "Just listen," the voice continued, unperturbed. "The key you found is important. It leads to a safe house. There, you'll find answers about Lily and the Order. But you have to hurry. They're closing in." "Who are you?" I demanded, frustration boiling over. "Why should I trust you?" "Trust me or not, it doesn't matter. The truth is waiting for you. Just go to Elm Street, the old bookshop. You'll find what you need." Before I could respond, the line went dead again, leaving me with a sense of foreboding. "What did they say?" Tom asked, concern etched on his face. "They said the key leads to a safe house," I explained, holding it up. "We need to get to Elm Street, to the old bookshop." "Let's move then," Tom urged, glancing around nervously. "We don't have much time." We hurried back to the car, my heart racing as we drove toward Elm Street. The city began to blur, the familiar sights twisted into a surreal landscape under the weight of our mission. As we arrived at the old bookshop, a sense of unease washed over me. The building stood ominously at the end of the street, its windows dark and foreboding. "Are you sure this is the right place?" Tom asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is it," I said, stepping out of the car and approaching the entrance. The wooden door creaked open as I pushed it, the scent of old paper and dust wafting over us. Inside, the shop was a maze of towering shelves filled with books, each one a portal to a different world. But tonight, it felt more like a labyrinth filled with secrets. I felt a pull, guiding me toward the back where the light flickered from a small reading nook. "Look," I said, pointing to a door at the back, partially ajar. "That must be it." We moved cautiously, our footsteps muffled by the thick carpet as we approached the door. I pushed it open, revealing a dimly lit room filled with boxes and dusty artifacts. In the center stood a table cluttered with papers, old photographs, and books. "This must be what they meant," I said, excitement building as I rummaged through the piles. "There's got to be something about Lily here." Tom began flipping through a stack of photographs, his expression shifting from curiosity to shock. "Marcus, look at this," he said, holding up a photo of a group of people gathered at our exhibition. My heart sank as I recognized Lily standing among them, a vibrant smile on her face. "Who are they?" I asked, peering over his shoulder. "I don't know, but look at the man next to her," Tom pointed. He had dark hair and a piercing gaze that sent a shiver down my spine. "He looks familiar." "That's Derek," I realized, feeling a sense of dread wash over me. What was she doing with him? Tom continued to sift through the papers, suddenly freezing. "Wait, there's more," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "This looks like a journal. It might have details about her findings." I leaned closer as he unfolded the fragile pages, revealing Lily's neat handwriting. "I've discovered something about the Order of the Lost. They've been manipulating events to cover their tracks. I need to find out what happened to my family. There's a connection to the disappearances." "Marcus, this is it," Tom exclaimed, his eyes wide. "This is what we need." But before we could process the gravity of our discovery, the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoed through the shop, growing louder. My heart raced as I exchanged worried glances with Tom. "We need to hide," I whispered, glancing around for a place to conceal ourselves. "Over here," Tom said, pulling me behind a large bookshelf. We crouched low, our breaths shallow as the footsteps approached, the tension thick in the air. The door swung open, and a group of men entered, their presence radiating danger. I recognized one of them, the man from the warehouse, a glimmer of recognition crossing his features as he scanned the room. "Split up," he ordered, his voice gruff. "Search everywhere. We can't let them escape with what they know." I felt my heart pound in my chest as we held our breath, fear coursing through my veins. The men began to spread out, their footsteps growing closer. "Marcus," Tom whispered, his voice trembling. "What do we do?" "We wait," I replied, my mind racing. "We can't let them find us. We have to stay quiet." As the men continued their search, I could feel the weight of our situation pressing down on me. The truth was within reach, but danger lurked just a heartbeat away. I could feel the chill of the room seep into my bones as I crouched behind the bookshelf, my heart thundering in my chest. The men rummaging through the bookshop were relentless, their presence an ominous reminder of how deeply tangled we were in a web of danger. Each creak of the floorboard sent shivers down my spine, amplifying my fear. "Tom," I whispered, my voice barely audible, "we need to find a way out of here. This isn't just about us anymore, it's about Lily." "Do you think she's still alive?" he asked, his eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. "I have to believe she is," I replied, forcing a steadiness into my voice that I didn't quite feel. "She was brave. She wouldn't have stopped searching for the truth." The sound of footsteps echoed closer, and I held my breath, trying to focus on what I could hear. I strained to listen as one of the men began to search the area near our hiding spot. "They have to be here somewhere," he grunted, tossing aside books carelessly. "We can't let them slip away again." My heart sank at the word again. It was a reminder that whatever had happened before was part of a larger story, one that involved Lily, the Order, and potentially others who had come before us. I glanced at Tom, and we exchanged a silent understanding we needed to act fast. "On the count of 3, we slip out and head for the back door," I whispered. "Ready?" Tom nodded, his eyes reflecting the fear and determination swirling within me. 1, 2, 3. We moved quickly, darting from our hiding place and slipping through the narrow aisle between the shelves. I felt a rush of adrenaline as I maneuvered past the chaos, keeping my eyes on the back door, which stood ajar, beckoning like a lifeline. But as we reached the door, I froze, my stomach twisting in knots. Just outside, one of the men was standing, blocking our exit. "They must be in here somewhere," he shouted, turning to call to his companions. "Marcus," Tom hissed, panic lacing his voice. I looked around, desperate for an alternative route. Just then, I spotted a small door behind a stack of old crates. "This way," I urged, leading us toward it. We squeezed through the door, the wood creaking ominously as we slipped inside. The room was dark, filled with musty air and shadows. It appeared to be a storage area, cluttered with boxes and remnants of forgotten inventory. "Now what?" Tom whispered, glancing around anxiously. I could hear the men's voices growing closer, their frustration palpable as they continued their search. "We have to find a way out," I said urgently. "There has to be a back exit." "Over there." Tom pointed to a window, partially covered by dust-laden blinds. It was small, but it looked like it might lead us outside. We rushed toward it, my heart pounding as I tried to push the window open. It stuck at first, the wood groaning in protest, but with a determined shove, it finally gave way. I could feel the cool night air rush in, invigorating and terrifying all at once. "Help me," I urged Tom as I squeezed through the opening. He followed closely behind, and I felt a sense of relief wash over me as we tumbled into the alley outside, the night sky overhead sprawling with stars. "Which way?" he asked, looking around frantically. "Down the alley and around the corner," I said, trying to catch my breath. "We'll circle back to the main street." We moved quickly, my mind racing as I tried to formulate a plan. The city felt eerily quiet at this hour, as if it were holding its breath. But the weight of the journal and the knowledge it contained pressed heavily on me. I knew we couldn't stop now. We had to get back to safety and figure out our next steps. As we emerged onto the main street, I spotted a familiar diner across the road. Maggie's Diner was a place I had visited countless times, a beacon of warmth and familiarity. "We can hide there for a while," I suggested, my eyes scanning the street for any sign of danger. We dashed across the road, slipping inside just as the bell above the door chimed. The dim light of the diner was inviting, but I felt a pang of nostalgia mixed with anxiety. The smell of fresh coffee and greasy fries wafted through the air, reminding me of simpler times before everything turned chaotic. "Get a booth in the back," I whispered to Tom, nodding toward a secluded corner. We slid into the booth, the vinyl seats squeaking beneath us as I tried to steady my breathing. "Do you think they saw us?" Tom asked, looking around nervously. "I don't know," I said, glancing at the entrance. "But we can't let our guard down. We need to lay low and think." Just then, a waitress approached, her smile bright against the somber backdrop of our situation. "What can I get you too?" she asked, her voice cheerful. "Just coffee, please," I said, forcing a smile. "And maybe some pie." "Coming right up," she chirped, moving away to get her order. I watched her go, the mundane nature of her actions grounding me for a moment. It was easy to forget the chaos outside, but I knew better. The men were still out there, still searching for us, and we were running out of time. "Okay," I said, turning to Tom, who looked more anxious than ever. "We need to figure out our next move. We have the journal, and it mentions something about the order. But what does it really mean?" Tom took a deep breath, visibly calming himself. "Maybe we should look for any connections in the city, places they might be hiding or operating from. If we can figure out where they gather, we might uncover their plans." "Right," I said, my mind racing with possibilities. "And we can't forget about Lily. If she was involved in this, we have to find her before it's too late." Suddenly, the door to the diner swung open, and my heart dropped. A group of men stepped inside, their presence filling the room with an unsettling tension. I recognized one of them instantly, the same man who had been at the warehouse. "Stay calm," I whispered to Tom, trying to maintain a facade of normalcy. "They can't know we're here." We lowered our heads, pretending to focus on the menu as the men settled at a booth across from us. I could feel my pulse quicken, the tension in the air thickening like fog. "Do you think they know we're here?" Tom whispered, his voice barely audible. "I hope not," I replied, my stomach churning. "But we have to be ready. If they start asking questions, we need to find a way out." I glanced at the men, their voices rising in hushed tones. One of them leaned forward, looking agitated. "We can't let them get away with this. We know they're after the journal. If they find it..." "Just keep looking," the man at the head of the table snapped, his tone sharp. "They can't be far." My heart raced at his words. They were indeed searching for us. We had to act fast. "Tom, we have to go," I whispered urgently, pushing up from the booth. "But where?" he asked, panic flashing in his eyes. "Out the back," I said, nodding toward the door that led to the kitchen. "We can slip out through there." We moved swiftly, navigating through the diner until we reached the kitchen door. It swung open with a loud clang, and I held my breath, hoping it wouldn't draw any attention. "Go, go," I urged, and we slipped inside, the chaos of the diner fading behind us. Once in the kitchen, I spotted a back door leading to an alley. "This way." I led Tom through the door, emerging into the cool night air once more. We stumbled into the alley, and I felt a surge of relief wash over me. "What now?" Tom asked, glancing around. "We need to get somewhere safe, and we need to find out more about the order," I said, looking at the darkened streets before us. "But we can't let them track us." Suddenly, a sound pierced the night, a sharp crack of a gunshot that echoed down the alley. My heart dropped as I turned to see the figure of a man emerging from the shadows, a gun clutched in his hand. "Stop right there," he shouted, his voice cold and menacing. "Run," I yelled, grabbing Tom's arm as we bolted down the alley, fear propelling us forward. We raced through the darkness, the sound of footsteps and shouts echoing behind us. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, urging me to push harder, to keep moving. We had to escape the clutches of the order and uncover the truth before it consumed us. But as we turned a corner, I felt the weight of inevitability settle over me. We were running from something far greater than ourselves, and I could sense the shadows of the past closing in. We sprinted through the dark alley, my heart pounding in rhythm with our footsteps echoing off the damp pavement. The chilling night air stung my lungs, and the distant sounds of the city faded into an ominous silence, punctuated only by our rapid breathing and the fading shouts of our pursuers. I could feel the urgency of the moment driving us forward, the instinct to survive eclipsing all rational thought. "Where do we go now?" Tom gasped, glancing over his shoulder as if the shadows were closing in. "Just keep running," I urged, urging him to pick up his pace. We had to reach the safety of the crowded streets, where anonymity could provide us a momentary refuge. We burst out of the alley, emerging onto a bustling street filled with late-night pedestrians. The neon lights of a nearby bar flickered like distant stars, drawing our attention as we merged into the crowd. For a brief moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Blending in among strangers could buy us precious time. "Act normal," I whispered to Tom, scanning the faces around us. "We can't draw attention." The thrumming bass of music from the bar filled the air, creating a stark contrast to the tension that clung to us like a second skin. We slipped into the bar, the door swinging shut behind us, and I felt the warmth envelop us, though it did little to ease my rising anxiety. We found a corner booth, and I slid in, my eyes darting toward the entrance. "Keep your head down," I instructed. "We need to blend in until we can figure out our next move." As I peered through the crowd, I caught snippets of conversation, laughter, shouts, and the clinking of glasses. But beneath that surface-level normalcy, I felt an undercurrent of danger lurking, waiting for the right moment to strike. "What now?" Tom asked, his eyes wide with worry. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the journal, its pages worn and marked with my desperate scrawlings. "We need to read this," I said, laying it on the table between us. "There might be something in here that can help us understand the order and what they want." Tom nodded, glancing around nervously before focusing on the journal. I flipped through the pages, scanning my notes, looking for anything that might shed light on our predicament. The earlier entries felt like a distant memory, before the chaos had enveloped us. "Wait," I said, stopping on a page marked with a sketch of a building. "This is where Lily used to work. She mentioned something about a safe house." "What does that mean?" Tom asked, peering at the page. "It could be a place where she felt secure." A location where we can gather more information or maybe even find her. Hope began to flicker within me again, though it was dimmed by the looming threat of the order. "But how do we get there without being caught?" he asked, fear tinged in his voice. "We'll need to leave this place discreetly and find a way to that location without drawing attention. It's late, and if we're careful, we can make it." As I scanned the bar again, I noticed a group of men standing at the bar, their demeanor too casual, too observant. My instincts screamed at me, something about them felt wrong. They were here on a mission, and I feared it had to do with us. "Tom," I whispered urgently, "I think we might have company." He followed my gaze and paled, recognizing the same men I had noticed. "What do we do?" "Stay calm and keep your head down. We need to make a move before they spot us," I said, my heart racing. I could feel the weight of the journal pressing down on me, the secrets it held like a ticking clock. We couldn't afford to stay in the bar any longer, not with those men watching. "We'll go out the back," I decided. There's usually a service exit in bars like this. We slipped out of the booth and made our way toward the back of the bar, staying low and close to the walls. The narrow hallway was dimly lit, filled with the sounds of laughter and music from the main room. As we approached the door, I glanced back once more, catching sight of the men moving through the crowd, their eyes scanning every face. "Now!" I urged, pushing the door open and slipping outside. We stepped into the cool night air, taking a moment to catch our breath. The alley was dark and quiet, the sounds of the bar fading behind us. "This way," I directed Tom, leading him away from the bustling streets toward a quieter area. As we walked, I could feel the tension coiling tighter around us. The streetlights cast long shadows, and I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. "What's the address of the safe house?" Tom asked, pulling out his phone to check the map. I rifled through my notes and found the details I had scribbled down. "It's a few blocks away, down at River Street. It shouldn't take long if we stay focused." "Let's hurry," he urged, glancing over his shoulder again. We made our way to River Street, moving swiftly but carefully through the quiet streets. The atmosphere felt thick with danger, each step echoing louder than the last. "Do you think we'll find her there?" Tom asked, his voice low and filled with uncertainty. "I have to believe we will," I replied, trying to inject hope into my words. "Lily wouldn't have left us without a way to find her. She was resourceful." As we turned a corner, I felt a sudden shift in the air, a prickling sensation running down my spine. I stopped, looking around. "Did you feel that?" "What?" Tom asked, halting beside me. "It's too quiet," I murmured, scanning our surroundings. "Something doesn't feel right." Just then, a figure emerged from the shadows ahead, blocking our path. "Going somewhere?" a man sneered, a smug grin spraying across his face. He was tall and imposing, flanked by two others who looked equally menacing. "Back off," I warned, stepping protectively in front of Tom. "We're not interested in any trouble." The man laughed, a harsh sound that sent chills through me. "You're already in trouble, and you don't even know it. The Order doesn't take kindly to people like you, especially when they start poking their noses where they don't belong." Before I could react, the men surged forward, and instinct kicked in. I grabbed Tom's hand, ready to run, but they were quicker, and a fist connected with my side, knocking the air from my lungs. I stumbled, gasping for breath as Tom shouted, "Run!" But before we could escape, the men closed in, their hands grabbing at us like a net tightening around our bodies. "We're not going to let you leave," the leader said, his breath hot against my face. "You have something that belongs to us." In that moment, all my thoughts flashed to the journal, the very reason we were being hunted. I knew we had to fight back to escape this trap. "Tom, hold on," I shouted, pushing against the man gripping my arm. With a sudden surge of adrenaline, I managed to break free, and I felt Tom's hand slip from mine. The darkness swirled around us, and chaos erupted as the three men lunged at us. "Stay together," I yelled, my heart pounding. I scanned the area for an escape route, desperate to protect us both. But as I turned, I saw Tom being pulled away, the men overwhelming him. I felt a primal fear surge through me, fear not just for our lives, but for the knowledge we were desperately trying to uncover. "Tom," I shouted, panic clawing at my throat. He struggled, trying to break free, but the men were too strong. I lunged forward, determined to reach him, but I was yanked back, a grip like iron on my wrist. "Let him go," I screamed, twisting against the man holding me. The world around me blurred, the sounds of the city fading into a cacophony of shouts and laughter, replaced by the pounding of my heart in my ears. I fought with everything I had, adrenaline coursing through my veins as I struggled against the grip of the man holding me. But just as I was about to reach Tom, I felt a sharp pain in my side. I gasped, my vision narrowing as darkness threatened to take over. "Get the journal," I heard Tom shout, his voice filled with desperation. The last thing I remember was the sound of laughter fading into the night as everything around me slipped into darkness. I awoke in a haze, my mind foggy and disoriented. The familiar sounds of the city, cars honking, people laughing, the distant hum of life, felt muffled, like I was submerged underwater. Blinking against the harsh light, I tried to focus, but the throbbing pain in my side pulled me back into the depths of confusion. "Where?" I croaked, my voice barely a whisper. A figure loomed over me, a silhouette against the blinding light. I squinted, trying to make out who it was, but all I saw was a shadowy face framed by a dark hood. Panic surged through me as I tried to move, only to realize my wrists were bound. The rope dug into my skin, a reminder of the precarious situation I was in. "Ah, you're awake," the voice said, smooth and mocking. "Welcome back to the land of the living." "Let me go," I shouted, my voice stronger now, fueled by anger and fear. The figure stepped closer, revealing a familiar smirk. "You're not in a position to make demands, Marcus." It was Lucas, a former member of the Order, someone I had trusted once, now twisted into something dark and sinister. "What do you want?" I spat, my heart racing. Lucas leaned in, his eyes gleaming with malice. "You've stumbled into a world far beyond your comprehension. You think you can play with forces you don't understand? Where's Tom?" I demanded, desperation creeping into my voice. Lucas waved his hand dismissively. "He's safe, for now. But you have something we need, the journal. It holds secrets that could disrupt everything." My stomach sank. I had hidden the journal in my jacket before they took me. It was the only link to understanding what the Order was really after and possibly finding Lily. "You'll never get it," I said defiantly, trying to mask the fear gnawing at me. He chuckled, a low, menacing sound. "Oh, I think you'll see things differently soon. The Order doesn't take kindly to disobedience." With that, he stepped back, and the room around me came into focus. I was in a dimly lit basement, concrete walls cold and damp. Shadows danced in the corners, and the faint sound of dripping water echoed around us. I struggled against the ropes binding my wrists, but they only tightened. "Stop squirming," Lucas said, his voice dripping with disdain. It won't help you. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the panic rising within me. I needed a plan, a way out. But first, I had to get information. What does the order want with the journal? Lucas raised an eyebrow, surprised by my boldness. You really don't know, do you? It's not just any journal. It contains the names of those who defected, information on our operations. It could bring everything crashing down. Then why not just take it? I challenged, trying to buy time. Because it's not just about the journal. It's about you, Marcus. You've been poking around where you don't belong, and now you must face the consequences. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. If they got the journal, everything I had fought for would unravel. Lily's secrets would fall into the wrong hands, and I couldn't let that happen. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and a figure stepped inside, a tall, imposing man with a familiar face. It was Victor, another former ally turned enemy, his expression unreadable. Lucas, he said, his voice gruff. Is it Dawn? Lucas nodded, a smug smile on his face. He's awake. We were just getting started. Good, Victor replied, stepping closer. We need to find out what he knows. We can't let him escape. I swallowed hard, dread pooling in my stomach. I had to think fast. You won't get anything out of me, I said defiantly. Victor leaned in, his eyes narrowing. Oh, we'll see about that. Before I could react, he reached out, his fingers gripping my jaw tightly. You're in over your head, Marcus. You think you can uncover the truth without consequences? You have no idea what we're capable of. I met his gaze, refusing to show fear. You're wrong. I won't let you win. Is that so? He sneered, releasing me abruptly. Then prepare for the truth. With a swift motion, Victor pulled out a small device, a digital recorder, and pressed a button. The room filled with a chilling, mechanical whirring as it came to life. Let's see how strong your resolve really is, he said, stepping back. We'll start with the basics. Tell me about the journal. I hesitated, weighing my options. If I gave them something, it might buy me time to escape or, at the very least, protect the journal. It's just notes, nothing more, I said, trying to sound nonchalant. Lucas scoffed. We both know that's a lie. You've been searching for something, haven't you? I could feel the weight of their stares, the intensity of their interest. I've been trying to find Lily, I admitted, the name slipping out before I could stop it. Lily? Victor repeated, a glint of interest flashing in his eyes. What does she have to do with this? She's part of it, I said quickly, trying to keep the narrative in my control. She was involved with the order, and she disappeared. I thought the journal might lead me to her. Lucas and Victor exchanged glances, their expressions shifting. Interesting, Victor said, stepping closer again. And what makes you think she's still alive? Because she's too strong to give up, I replied, trying to muster as much confidence as I could. Victor leaned in, studying me closely. Let's hope you're right. If you're lying, his voice trailed off, leaving a lingering threat hanging in the air. I'm not lying, I said, my voice firm. I'll find her, and I'll expose the order for what it really is. Then you'll need to be careful, Lucas said, a smile creeping back onto his face. Because we won't let that happen. You'll either help us, or you'll disappear like so many before you. I felt a chill run down my spine. The reality of my situation hit me hard. I was trapped, and my only chance of survival lay in manipulating the truth. Suddenly, the door burst open again, and a figure entered, a breathless Tom, looking disheveled and frantic. "Marcus," he shouted, eyes wide with fear. "Tom, no!" I cried, but it was too late. The men turned, surprise flashing across their faces. "Grab him," Victor ordered, lunging toward Tom, but he was quicker, dodging to the side and knocking over a metal chair. "Run!" I shouted, adrenaline pumping through me as I struggled against my restraints. Tom's eyes locked with mine, filled with determination. "I won't leave you. You have to. Get out of here." But before Tom could react, Lucas lunged, grabbing his arm and pulling him into the room. "Caught you," he hissed, twisting Tom's arm behind his back. "Stop!" I yelled, rage boiling within me. "Let him go!" Victor stepped forward, a menacing smile on his lips. "Looks like we have both of you now. This is turning out to be quite the night." As they dragged Tom toward me, I felt a surge of panic and anger. "What do you want from us?" I shouted, struggling against my bonds. "Information, Marcus," Victor said coolly. "And we're going to get it, one way or another." Tom met my gaze, his expression fierce and unyielding. "We'll never give in," he declared defiantly. "Let's see how long you can hold on to that resolve," Lucas sneered, tightening his grip on Tom's arm. As the darkness of despair threatened to consume me, I realized that our only chance lay in outsmarting them. We had to escape, to find the journal, and uncover the truth hidden within its pages. But as the door slammed shut, sealing our fate, I knew one thing for certain: we were about to enter the most dangerous game of our lives. The darkness in the room was suffocating, wrapping around us like a heavy blanket. I strained against the ropes, but the more I fought, the tighter they felt. Every muscle in my body screamed for release as panic surged through me. Tom was still caught in Lucas's grip, his face set in a mask of defiance, but I could see the flicker of fear in his eyes. "Let him go, Lucas," I shouted, trying to keep my voice steady. "He's done nothing wrong." Lucas's grip on Tom only tightened. "That's where you're mistaken, Marcus. He's an accomplice, just like you." Tom struggled against the hold, his face flushed with effort. "I won't let you take him," he yelled, his voice a mixture of rage and desperation. "Enough!" Victor barked, his tone slicing through the tension like a knife. "We need to figure out how much you both know before we proceed." "Proceed to what?" I shot back, my heart racing. "What are you planning to do?" Victor stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "We'll extract the truth, one way or another. You think you can just walk away from this? The order is far more powerful than you can imagine." I glanced at Tom, and in that brief exchange, we shared a silent understanding: we couldn't give in. No matter what they threatened us with, we had to stay strong. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Tom asked, his voice low but steady. "You don't know what you're getting into." Lucas laughed, a chilling sound that echoed in the dimly lit basement. "You two really think you're in control here? You have no idea how many have come before you, thinking they could defy the order. Then why are you still afraid?" I countered, my anger rising. "If you're so powerful, why do you need us?" Victor stepped back, a calculating look crossing his face. "You're right about one thing, Marcus. We need you because of the journal. If we don't get it, everything we've built will collapse." Then you'll have to torture us to get it, Tom said defiantly, but I could see the tremor in his hands. Lucas tightened his grip even more, forcing Tom to his knees. Torture isn't our first choice, but we're not afraid to use it. You'll talk eventually, everyone does. I felt a rush of helplessness wash over me. We were trapped, our fates in the hands of these twisted men who thrived on fear and control. But I refused to let them see my despair. Do what you want, I said, forcing a sneer. You'll never find out what you need. Victor chuckled, stepping back to give Lucas room. We'll see about that. As Lucas pulled a chair closer, I tried to remain calm, to think of a way out. I remembered the small blade I had slipped into my pocket before the confrontation. If I could just get to it, I might have a chance to free myself and Tom. Let me show you what happens to those who resist, Lucas said, his voice dripping with malice. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metal instrument, a knife, its blade gleaming under the flickering light. No! I shouted, my heart racing as fear gripped me. But Lucas only smiled, the darkness in his eyes deepening. You have a choice, Marcus. Either tell us what we want to know, or watch as I make this very personal. He brought the knife closer to Tom's face, the blade reflecting the dim light. What's it going to be? Stop! I yelled, the urgency in my voice cutting through the tension. I'll tell you. Just leave him alone. Lucas paused, a wicked grin spreading across his face. Now we're getting somewhere. Victor watched with interest, his arms crossed over his chest. Let's hear it then. I took a deep breath, searching for the right words to buy us time. The journal it's a list of names. Names of people involved with the order. Lucas narrowed his eyes, his interest piqued. Go on. And it has details about past operations. But it's not complete, there are gaps in the information. Victor leaned in, intrigued. Gaps? What do you mean? I mean, it's not just names. It's also about what the Order plans to do next. Tom shot me a look, his eyes wide with concern. I hoped I hadn't revealed too much too soon. Where is it? Victor demanded, his voice low and threatening. It's hidden, I said quickly, trying to formulate a believable lie. In a safe place. You won't find it unless you know where to look. Lucas leaned back, contemplating my words. Interesting. And how would we find it? I can take you there, I offered, my heart pounding in my chest. But you have to let Tom go first. Victor exchanged glances with Lucas, considering my proposition. You expect us to trust you? If you don't, you'll never get what you want, I replied, desperation creeping into my tone. I won't lead you astray. I want to find Lily just as much as you want the journal. Lucas's grip on Tom loosened slightly, but not enough for him to escape. You really think you can play us, Marcus? I forced a smile, hoping to mask the fear swirling inside me. I'm not playing. I'm trying to help. Very well, Victor said finally, a dangerous glint in his eye. You have one chance. But make no mistake, we'll be watching you every step of the way. Lucas released Tom completely, shoving him forward as if discarding a piece of trash. Get up, he sneered. Tom stumbled but quickly regained his footing, glaring at Lucas with unbridled fury. You'll regret this, he spat. Enough, Victor said sharply. We're wasting time. Marcus, show us where the journal is. I glanced at Tom, his eyes full of worry. but I nodded, trying to convey strength despite the terror churning within me. "Follow me," I said, leading the way out of the basement, my heart racing with the knowledge that every step could lead us into deeper danger. The corridor was dark, the air thick with tension. I led them toward the back exit, my mind racing with possible escape routes. If I could just find a way to get out of their sight, we might stand a chance. As we approached the door, I took a deep breath, forcing my pulse to slow. This was it. Either we would find the journal and escape, or we would fall into their trap. I glanced back at Tom, and in that moment, we both knew we had to stick together. No matter what lay ahead, we would face it side by side. "Here it is," I said, reaching for the doorknob. My hand trembled, the weight of uncertainty bearing down on me. "Open it," Victor ordered, his voice firm. With a deep breath, I turned the knob and pushed the door open, stepping into the unknown. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit alleyway that seemed to stretch infinitely into darkness. The smell of damp concrete mingled with the scent of distant rain, sending a chill down my spine. I stepped out cautiously, feeling Tom's presence just behind me, the warmth of his body a small comfort against the encroaching shadows. "Where is this journal, Marcus?" Victor's voice sliced through the air, impatient and demanding. "Don't waste our time." I turned to face him, trying to maintain a facade of confidence despite the turmoil churning within. "Just a little further," I said, my voice steady, but my heart raced. "It's in my apartment. I need to get the key." Victor nodded, his expression unreadable. "Lead the way." "Lucas, keep an eye on them." Lucas stepped forward, a sinister grin plastered across his face as he positioned himself beside us. The menace radiating from him was palpable, like a predator watching its prey. "Don't try anything stupid," he said, his voice low and threatening. "We're always prepared." I nodded, suppressing a shiver. Tom and I exchanged glances, a silent agreement that we would find a way out of this nightmare together. I had to be careful. Each step felt like a tightrope walk over an abyss, and one misstep could send us plummeting into darkness. As we made our way through the narrow alley, I began to formulate a plan. The journal was the key to everything, and I knew its value was greater than they realized. But I also had to think about how we could escape from this situation alive. The alley twisted and turned, leading us through a labyrinth of shadows and flickering streetlights. Each step echoed in my ears, a reminder of the danger that lurked just behind us. Lucas trailed closely, his eyes darting around as if expecting an ambush at any moment. "Are you always this paranoid?" I asked, trying to diffuse the tension. "Only around traitors," he replied, his grin fading slightly. "You do well to remember that." The city loomed around us, the buildings towering like silent sentinels, witnesses to our plight. I felt the weight of its history pressing down, the ghosts of past choices whispering warnings in the back of my mind. This wasn't just about the journal, it was about the lives that had been affected, the web of deceit woven by the order. Finally, we reached my apartment building, a nondescript structure nestled between a bakery and a small grocery store. It was both comforting and foreboding, a place filled with memories of a life before the darkness had seeped in. "Get inside," Victor ordered, gesturing toward the door. "We don't have all night." With a nod, I pushed the door open and stepped into the familiar hallway. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting an eerie glow on the worn carpet. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating, as Lucas and Victor followed closely behind, their presence a constant reminder of the danger we were in. "Where's the key?" Victor demanded, his impatience growing. It's on my key ring, I replied, moving toward my apartment door, trying to keep my hands from shaking. Just let me unlock it, and I'll show you. I fumbled for the keys, my heart pounding in my chest. As I pulled up the right one, I could feel their eyes boring into me, watching my every move. I hesitated for a moment, glancing back at Tom, who stood just behind me, his expression a mixture of fear and determination. Open it, Lucas growled, his voice low and threatening. With a deep breath, I inserted the key and turned it, the lock clicking softly as the door swung open. The familiar scent of my apartment filled the air, old books, coffee, and a hint of something else, something more sinister that had taken root in my life. Show us the journal, Victor commanded, stepping inside with Lucas close behind. I stepped into the room, scanning the space for any signs of danger. It's in the living room, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. As I led them deeper into the apartment, I felt a sudden rush of memories, the laughter, the quiet moments with Tom, and the nightmares that had begun to plague me. This was my sanctuary, but now it felt like a cage. Where? Victor snapped, his patience wearing thin. On the bookshelf, I replied, gesturing toward the wall lined with books. On the second shelf, to the right. Lucas moved closer, his eyes darting over the collection of novels and journals, searching for the one that held the secrets of my past. I watched with bated breath, my heart racing. If they found it, everything would change, my life, my future, and the lives of everyone I cared about. There it is, Lucas said suddenly, pulling a battered leather journal from the shelf. He opened it, his eyes scanning the pages with an unsettling intensity. Stop! I shouted, my voice rising in panic. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Victor chuckled, his demeanor shifting as he flipped through the pages. Oh, I think we do. This is far more than just a journal. This is power. What do you mean? Tom asked, his voice low. Victor looked up, a glint of madness in his eyes. It contains names, connections, everything we need to solidify our influence. You've unknowingly handed us the key to the kingdom. I felt a surge of dread wash over me. This was worse than I had feared. The journal wasn't just a record of my past, it was a weapon in the hands of these men. Give it back. I yelled, stepping forward, my hands clenched into fists. Not a chance, Lucas sneered, tucking the journal under his arm. This changes everything. With this, we can wipe out anyone who stands in our way. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I couldn't let them take this from me. I couldn't let them use it to hurt anyone else. Tom, now! I shouted, my heart pounding as I reached for the small blade hidden in my pocket. In a flash, I lunged toward Lucas, who was momentarily taken aback. What the? I drove the blade toward the journal, aiming for the pages that held my past, the memories I wanted to protect. But Lucas reacted quickly, sidestepping my attempt and grabbing my wrist. Are you insane? He growled, twisting my arm painfully. Victor stepped forward, eyes wide with fury. You think you can stop us? You'll regret this. In that moment of chaos, Tom moved. He charged at Victor, knocking him off balance, and together we tumbled to the ground. The journal slipped from Lucas's grip, and in the brief moment of disarray, I managed to wrench my arm free. Get the journal! I yelled to Tom as I pushed myself to my feet, adrenaline coursing through my veins. But Lucas recovered quickly, lunging for us as Victor regained his footing. Stop them! Victor shouted, his voice echoing in the small space. The room erupted into chaos, and as Tom scrambled for the journal, I felt a surge of desperation. This was it, the moment where everything could change. But as Tom grasped the journal, I could see the glimmer of determination in his eyes. "We have to get out of here," he shouted, gripping it tightly. "Let's go," I urged, adrenaline pushing me forward as I rushed toward the door. We burst into the hallway, but Lucas was hot on our heels, his fury palpable. "You won't escape that easily." We dashed down the corridor, our footsteps echoing against the walls, a frantic rhythm of survival. "Where do we go?" Tom gasped, looking around frantically. "Downstairs," I shouted, pointing toward the stairwell at the end of the hall. "We need to get to the street." As we raced toward the stairs, I could hear Victor's furious shouts behind us, a reminder that we were far from safe. "Don't let them get away," Lucas yelled, his voice chasing us as we plunged down the steps, the sound of our escape mingling with the chaos above. We reached the ground floor, bursting through the exit and into the cool night air. The street lay before us, dimly lit by flickering streetlights, and for a brief moment, the taste of freedom filled my lungs. "Where now?" Tom panted, glancing over his shoulder as we sprinted into the open. "Anywhere but here," I urged, my mind racing as we dashed down the street, the adrenaline coursing through my veins propelling us forward. But the sense of safety was fleeting. A sharp noise rang out behind us, and I turned to see Lucas and Victor emerging from the building, their figures dark against the flickering light. "This isn't over," Victor shouted, his voice echoing in the night. We ran faster, the urgency of our situation hitting us with full force. We had to get as far away as possible, but the weight of the journal pressed heavily in Tom's grip, a reminder of the danger we faced. "Marcus," Tom yelled, his voice urgent. "We need to split up. They'll be looking for two of us." I hesitated, my heart racing at the thought of being separated. "Are you sure?" "It's the best chance we have," Tom insisted, his eyes filled with determination. "You know this city better than I do. If we split up, we can cover more ground. They'll have a harder time tracking us." The desperation in his voice struck a chord. He was right. The streets of New Haven were familiar territory for me, a maze I had navigated countless times before. I took a deep breath, trying to quell the rising panic. "Okay. Meet back at the old diner on 5th Street in an hour. If I'm not there, go without me." Tom nodded, and without another word, we separated. I felt a pang of fear as I watched him sprint down a side street, blending into the shadows. The world around me felt heavy with uncertainty, every shadow and sound magnified in the stillness of the night. I ducked into a narrow alley, pressing my back against the cool brick wall, my heart pounding in my chest. I could hear the distant shouts of Victor and Lucas, their angry voices echoing down the street as they searched for us. I closed my eyes, focusing on my breathing, willing myself to remain calm. The alley smelled of damp earth and decay, a stark contrast to the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I scanned the area for a way out, a place to hide. At the end of the alley, I spotted a set of stairs leading up to a fire escape. Without hesitating, I made my way toward it, hoping it would give me a better vantage point and a chance to escape. I climbed the rickety stairs, each creak amplifying my anxiety. As I reached the top, I crouched behind a rusted railing, my breath catching in my throat. From this height, I had a clear view of the street below, where Victor and Lucas were pacing, their frustration palpable. "Where did they go?" Victor growled, his fists clenched at his sides. Damn it. They can't have gotten far, Lucas replied, scanning the surroundings. Let's split up. I'll take the left side of the block, you take the right. They can't hide forever. I felt a rush of dread as they began to disperse, but it also ignited a flicker of hope. I could use this time to find a plan, to think about how to get the journal back and, more importantly, how to protect Tom. As Victor moved farther down the street, I heard a distant siren wailing in the background. The sound seemed to echo my growing anxiety. I knew I had to act fast. I climbed onto the roof of the adjacent building, careful to stay low and out of sight. From this vantage point, I could see the entire street and keep an eye on both Victor and Lucas. As I settled in, I recalled the contents of the journal. It wasn't just a record of my past, it held the truth about the Order, connections that extended far beyond my understanding. If Victor and Lucas got their hands on it, they could turn the knowledge into a weapon. I needed to find Tom. I thought about the diner, a place filled with memories. It was familiar territory, a safe haven where we had spent countless nights talking, planning, and dreaming. If Tom made it there, I had to join him. Suddenly, I saw Victor re-emerge from the corner of the block, frustration etched on his face. They're close. We need to find them, he shouted into the night, his voice a mixture of anger and determination. I could hear Lucas's footsteps approaching as he returned to Victor's side, his demeanor more aggressive than before. Let's check the diner, Lucas suggested, glancing down the street. I bet they think they're safe there. We'll corner them. My heart sank. I had to get to Tom before they did. I knew the back alleys well and could use them to get to the diner before they arrived. As I made my way across the rooftops, I kept low, moving quickly and quietly. I jumped from one building to the next, my heart pounding with each leap, adrenaline fueling my speed. The cool night air whipped around me, mingling with the rising fear that clung to my thoughts. When I finally reached the edge of the diner's parking lot, I spotted Tom through the window, his back turned to the door, immersed in the pages of the journal. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. I could see Victor and Lucas approaching, their figures dark against the diner's neon glow. Tom! I shouted, my voice urgent but muffled by the distance. He turned, confusion and then recognition flashing across his face. Marcus, he exclaimed, his eyes widening with alarm. Get out of sight. They're coming. I yelled, my voice desperate. Tom quickly shoved the journal into his bag and slid out of the booth, moving toward the back of the diner. I watched as he ducked into the restroom, my heart racing. Victor and Lucas stepped into the diner, the door swinging shut behind them with an ominous thud. I felt a knot of fear tighten in my chest. They were inside. I had to act quickly to create a distraction. I glanced around the parking lot and spotted a trash can against the wall. Grabbing a rock, I aimed carefully and hurled it at the diner's window. The glass shattered with a loud crash, drawing the attention of everyone inside. What the hell was that? Lucas yelled, rushing toward the sound. Stay here, Victor commanded, turning to head for the exit. We'll check it out. This was my chance. I dashed around the corner, slipping through the back entrance of the diner, my heart pounding in my chest. The din of clattering dishes and voices filled the air, but I focused solely on finding Tom. Marcus. Tom's voice echoed from the restroom. Are you okay? I asked, glancing around to ensure we were alone. Yeah, but we need to get out of here now, he replied, his voice strained. Victor and Lucas are inside. They won't be long, I warned, urgency flooding my words. Tom nodded, and together we moved toward the back exit, pushing through the swinging door. As we stepped outside, I felt the rush of cold air against my skin, a stark contrast to the warmth of the diner. We slipped into the shadows, our breath coming in quick bursts as we made our way down the alley beside the diner. I turned to Tom, trying to assess the situation. "What do we do with the journal?" "I have a plan," he said, determination glinting in his eyes. "We need to get it to someone who can help us. The authorities, maybe? They need to know what's happening." I nodded, feeling a flicker of hope. "Let's head to the police station. It's not far from here." But as we turned to leave, a voice boomed from behind us. "Where do you think you're going?" We spun around to see Victor and Lucas emerging from the diner, their expressions twisted in rage. "You think you can just run away?" Lucas sneered, stepping forward menacingly. Tom and I exchanged a glance, adrenaline surging as we prepared to flee. "Run!" I shouted, and we took off down the alley, our footsteps pounding against the pavement. The night air felt charged with fear as we sprinted through the darkness, hearts racing as we navigated the maze of alleyways. The sounds of our pursuers echoed behind us, a relentless reminder of the danger closing in. But as we rounded a corner, we stumbled upon an old, abandoned warehouse, its large doors slightly ajar. Without hesitation, I pulled Tom inside, the darkness swallowing us whole. "Quick! We have to hide," I whispered, scanning the room for a place to conceal ourselves. Tom pointed to a stack of crates in the corner. We ducked behind them, trying to stifle our breaths. The atmosphere in the warehouse was thick with dust and neglect, a chilling silence surrounding us as we waited for the footsteps to draw closer. We could hear Victor and Lucas just outside, their voices harsh and angry. "They can't have gotten far. They must be hiding nearby," Victor growled, frustration evident in his tone. "I'll check the back," Lucas replied, the sound of his footsteps growing fainter as he moved away from us. "Stay alert," Victor warned, pacing just outside the warehouse entrance. As we crouched behind the crates, I felt the weight of the journal pressing against my side. This was it. Everything depended on what we did next. We had to make a decision. What if they find us? Tom whispered, fear in his eyes. "They won't," I assured him, though uncertainty gnawed at my insides. "We need to wait for the right moment to slip out." Just then, I caught a glimpse of something glimmering in the shadows, a small window near the ceiling, just big enough for us to crawl through. It would be a tight squeeze, but it might just lead us to safety. "Tom, look." I pointed to the window. "If we can climb up there, we can get out without being seen." He nodded, determination hardening his features. "Let's do it." We silently maneuvered our way toward the window, the adrenaline spurring us on. Climbing the crates, I hoisted myself up, reaching for the ledge. Tom followed closely behind, and with one last push, we scrambled through the opening, landing on the other side with barely a sound. The night air greeted us, cooler and fresher than the staleness of the warehouse. We found ourselves on a narrow rooftop, overlooking the street below. I could see Victor still pacing outside the warehouse, his frustration evident as he searched for us. "We need to get down and make a run for it," I whispered, looking around for a way down. "There," Tom pointed to a fire escape on the adjacent building. "If we can get to it, we can climb down." We made our way to the edge of the roof and slowly crawled over, careful not to make any noise. As we reached the fire escape, I glanced back at Victor, who was still distracted. We climbed down the rickety metal stairs, each creak sending shivers through my spine, but we managed to reach the ground without attracting attention. "Now what?" Tom asked, glancing around the deserted street. "We stick to the shadows," I replied, my voice steady despite the urgency. "We head toward the police station. It's just a few blocks away." We moved quickly, staying low and blending into the darkness. The streets were eerily quiet, our footsteps muffled against the pavement. As we approached the police station, the lights from the building illuminated the area, casting long shadows that danced in the night. "Just a little further," I urged, adrenaline coursing through my veins. But as we reached the entrance, a familiar voice called out behind us. "Marcus." "Tom." "Stop right there." We turned to see Lucas emerging from the shadows, a menacing grin stretching across his face. "Did you really think you could escape?" Panic surged through me as I pulled Tom behind me. "Run!" I shouted, pushing him toward the door. But before we could react, Lucas lunged forward, grabbing Tom's arm and yanking him back. "Not so fast." In a flash, I turned and tackled Lucas, pushing him away from Tom. We stumbled back, the two of us grappling for control. "Get off me!" Lucas shouted, trying to push me away. "Tom, go! Get help!" I yelled, my focus entirely on Lucas as I struggled to keep him at bay. "Marcus, no!" Tom shouted, his eyes wide with fear. "Just go!" I screamed, forcing myself to stay in the fight. But as I wrestled with Lucas, I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on me. We were trapped, and time was running out. In that moment, everything slowed. The realization hit me like a freight train. We were fighting against a tide that threatened to swallow us whole. "Enough!" Victor's voice boomed from behind us, echoing through the night. "Lucas, let him go. We need the journal." With a shove, Lucas threw me off him, and I stumbled back, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I watched helplessly as Tom stood at the door, torn between helping me and escaping. Victor stepped closer, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of anger and triumph. "You think you can hide from us? This is bigger than you, Marcus." I straightened, defiance igniting within me. "You won't get away with this," I spat, my voice steady despite the chaos around us. "Oh, but we already have," Victor replied, a sinister smile creeping across his face. Suddenly, a blaring siren echoed in the distance, growing louder. I glanced over my shoulder to see flashing lights approaching, the silhouette of a police car turning the corner. Relief washed over me, but it was quickly overshadowed by the realization of what was about to happen. "Lucas, let's go!" Victor shouted, his voice filled with urgency. Before I could react, they turned to flee, sprinting down the street as the police car pulled up. "Hey! Stop right there," a voice commanded as officers jumped out, rushing toward us. "Marcus!" "Tom," one of the officers shouted, recognizing us. We barely had time to process what was happening before the officers began to chase after Victor and Lucas, their shouts echoing in the night. "Are you two okay?" one officer asked, concern etched on his face. I nodded, my heart racing as I realized we had made it. "They're part of the order. They have the journal." The officer's expression turned serious as he motioned for backup. "Stay here. We're going after them." I watched as they rushed off, adrenaline still coursing through my veins. "We did it, Tom," I said, breathing heavily. But Tom's face was pale, his eyes wide with fear. What if they come back? What if they find us? They won't, I assured him, though doubt lingered in my mind. We need to tell them everything we know. The officers returned moments later, their expressions tense. They got away, but we have a description. We'll send out Bolo, one officer said, glancing between us. Can you tell us what happened? As I recounted the events, I could feel the weight of the journal pressing on my mind. This was only the beginning. The order was still out there, and they wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. When I finished, the officer nodded, his expression serious. We need to take your statements. And we'll need that journal, too. I glanced at Tom, who was still shaken but resolute. We'll give it to you, but we need to ensure our safety. They'll come after us again. The officer hesitated, then nodded. We'll do everything we can. Let's get you both out of here for now. As we walked toward the police car, I felt a sense of hope mingled with fear. We had escaped, but the battle was far from over. The order had lost tonight, but they would be back, and we had to be ready. The police station was bustling with activity, officers moving quickly as they processed reports and coordinated responses. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow on everything around us. I sat across from Tom in the small interview room, the weight of the world pressing down on us as we waited for someone to come and take our statements. How are you holding up? I asked, glancing at him. I don't know, he replied, his voice shaky. I thought we were done for back there. We're okay now, I reassured him, though I couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom that clung to me. We just need to stick together and stay alert. A knock on the door interrupted us, and an officer stepped in. Are you ready to give your statements? Tom and I nodded, and the officer motioned for us to follow him. As we walked down the hallway, I couldn't help but notice the tense atmosphere in the station, the urgency palpable as officers prepared for the next steps. The interview room was small and sparsely decorated, with a table and a couple of chairs. We took our seats, and the officer, a middle-aged man with a stern expression, sat across from us. Okay, let's start from the beginning, he said, his pen poised over a notepad. As I began recounting the events of the night, from the phone calls to the confrontation with Victor and Lucas, I felt a surge of anger and fear. I could see Tom's tension rising as he listened, his hands clenched tightly in his lap. When I finished, the officer looked at us seriously. You're both aware that the order is dangerous, right? We need to take this seriously. Yes, Tom replied, his voice steadying. They've been targeting us for a while. I think they're planning something bigger. The officer nodded, his expression grave. We'll increase patrols in the area and see what we can do about your safety. But you need to be vigilant. They may come after you again. What about the journal? I asked, my heart pounding at the thought of it being out there. We'll need it as evidence, the officer replied. Can you tell me where it is now? It's safe, I assured him, though my stomach twisted with anxiety. We'll give it to you once we're finished here. After taking our statements, the officer thanked us for our cooperation and left the room, leaving Tom and me alone once again. What now? Tom asked, his voice low. Now we wait, I replied, glancing at the door. But we have to be prepared for whatever comes next. We need to find a way to counter the order and put a stop to them once and for all. Tom nodded, determination shining in his eyes. We can't let them win. The hours passed slowly as we waited for updates, the tension in the air thick and suffocating. I could feel the weight of the journal pressing on my mind, a reminder of the power it held. Finally, the officer returned, a look of urgency on his face. "We need to talk to you both again. We've received some new information about the order." I exchanged a glance with Tom, anxiety flooding my chest. "What is it?" "The order has been linked to several high-profile incidents in the area. They're planning something big, and we believe you might be in the crosshairs," he said, his voice serious. "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart racing. "They're orchestrating something that could have serious repercussions. We need your help to uncover their plans and bring them to justice," the officer explained. Tom looked at me, a mix of fear and determination in his eyes. "We can help," he said, his voice steady. "Good," the officer replied. "But it won't be easy. We need to move fast and stay ahead of them." As we prepared to leave the station, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The battle wasn't over, it was just beginning. Together, Tom and I would face the order, and we would fight back with everything we had. Days turned into weeks as Tom and I worked closely with the police to uncover the order's plans. We were provided with new identities, safety protocols, and the promise of protection. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that lingered over us. Every phone call, every shadow felt like a potential threat. The order was out there, waiting for the right moment to strike, and I knew they wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. One night, as we were reviewing the journal, I noticed something strange. There was a pattern to the events mentioned, a connection I hadn't recognized before. "Tom, look at this," I said, pointing to a series of dates. "These incidents coincide with local events. It's like they're using the chaos as cover for their operations." Tom leaned closer, his eyes widening as he processed the information. "If we can figure out their next target, we can warn the police and stop them." We worked late into the night, piecing together the clues until finally we had a breakthrough. The order was planning to strike during the upcoming city festival, a time when the streets would be filled with people. "We have to warn the police," I said, urgency lacing my voice. Tom nodded, determination etched on his face. "Let's go." As we rushed to the police station, a sense of purpose surged within us. This was our chance to take back control, to prevent the order from executing their plans. When we arrived, the officers listened intently as we laid out our findings. "We have to set up a perimeter around the festival," the officer said, his expression serious. "If the order is planning to attack, we need to be ready." With our information in hand, the police mobilized quickly, deploying units throughout the festival grounds. Tom and I remained close to the action, our hearts pounding as the event unfolded around us. The festival was alive with excitement, music, laughter, and vibrant colors filled the air. But beneath the surface, a tension lingered, a sense of foreboding that something terrible could happen at any moment. As the evening wore on, I kept my eyes peeled for any signs of the order. I could feel the weight of the journal pressing against my side, a reminder of everything that had led us here. Then, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the festival in shadows, I saw them. Victor and Lucas, moving through the crowd with a menacing purpose. "There they are," I whispered to Tom, my heart racing. "Let's get the police," he replied, his voice steady despite the panic rising within me. But before we could reach the officers, a loud explosion erupted nearby, sending people screaming and running in all directions. Chaos erupted around us, and I felt a rush of panic surge through the crowd. "Stay close," I shouted to Tom as we weaved through the chaos, trying to find a way to safety. "Where are the police?" Tom yelled over the din, his eyes wide with fear. As we pushed forward, we spotted the officers rushing toward the source of the explosion, determination etched on their faces. "Over there!" I shouted, pointing to where Victor and Lucas had disappeared into the crowd. "Let's go!" Tom urged, and we sprinted after them, our hearts pounding with urgency. But the streets were filled with confusion and fear. People were tripping over one another, desperate to escape the chaos. I felt my chest tighten as we fought our way through the throng of bodies, every moment feeling like an eternity. Finally, we broke free from the crowd, and I could see Victor and Lucas slipping into an alleyway. "There!" I yelled, gesturing toward them. "Come on!" Tom urged, and we sprinted after them, determination driving us forward. We cornered into the alley, our breaths coming in quick gasps. "This ends now!" I shouted, my voice ringing with urgency. Victor and Lucas turned to face us, their expressions twisted with anger. "You think you can stop us?" Lucas sneered, brandishing a weapon. "We'll stop you before you can do any more harm," I retorted, fear morphing into rage. With a sudden rush of adrenaline, Tom and I charged forward. But before we could reach them, Victor lunged at Tom, tackling him to the ground. "Tom!" I shouted, panic surging through me as I tried to help him. But Lucas was right there, shoving me back as I stumbled. "You'll regret this," he shouted, his eyes filled with fury. I felt a surge of determination rise within me. I couldn't let them win. I had to protect Tom and stop the order once and for all. With a sudden burst of strength, I pushed past Lucas, reaching Tom just in time to help him up. We can't let them get away. As we fought back against Victor and Lucas, the sound of sirens echoed in the distance, growing louder. The chaos around us intensified, but I felt a surge of hope as we held our ground. We wouldn't let them take us down. We would fight, no matter the cost. In that moment, we became a force, two allies against the darkness that threatened to consume us. And as the police closed in, we knew that this battle was only the beginning of a war that would test our limits and our resolve. The aftermath of the festival was a blur of chaos and uncertainty. The police apprehended Victor and Lucas, and the order was finally exposed for their actions. But as I sat in the hospital with Tom, nursing our wounds, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the tip of the iceberg. "We did it," Tom said, his voice barely a whisper. "Yeah," I replied, but my heart felt heavy with doubt. "But at what cost?" Tom looked at me, confusion flickering in his eyes. "What do you mean?" "The journal, the order, it's not over." "They'll come back," I said, my voice thick with anxiety. He nodded, understanding creeping into his expression. "We have to be ready. We can't let them win." As we prepared to leave the hospital, a sense of determination settled within me. This was our chance to take control, to stand against the darkness that threatened our lives. In the weeks that followed, we worked tirelessly with the police, using the information in the journal to uncover more about the Order's operations. Each revelation brought us closer to understanding the extent of their reach, and we knew we had to act before it was too late. One night, as we reviewed the journal in our temporary safe house, I felt a flicker of hope. "Tom, look at this," I said, pointing to a passage that detailed a hidden location tied to the Order's plans. "This could be our chance," Tom said, excitement sparking in his eyes. "We have to get there before they do," I replied, determination fueling my every word. The next day, we set out, armed with the knowledge we had gained. We navigated the dark streets, following the clues that led us to a rundown warehouse on the outskirts of town. "This is it," I said, my heart racing as we approached the entrance. Tom nodded, his expression resolute. "Let's do this." We crept inside, the air thick with dust and uncertainty. As we moved deeper into the warehouse, the silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of our footsteps. Suddenly, we heard voices echoing from a nearby room. "They'll pay for what they've done," Victor's voice rang out, filled with anger. I exchanged a glance with Tom, and we moved closer, straining to listen. "We need to regroup and strike back," Lucas added, his tone cold and calculating. Fear coursed through me as I realized they were planning their next move. "We can't let them get away," I whispered to Tom. "No, we have to warn the police," he replied, his voice steady despite the tension. As we turned to leave, the floor creaked beneath us, and suddenly the door swung open, revealing Victor and Lucas, their eyes narrowing as they spotted us. "Marcus." "Tom." Victor shouted, his voice filled with fury. "You think you can escape us?" We sprinted down the hallway, adrenaline surging through our veins as we heard their footsteps pounding behind us. "Split up," I shouted to Tom, our instincts kicking in as we darted in different directions. I raced through the maze of the warehouse, my heart pounding in my chest. I could hear Lucas's voice behind me, taunting and threatening. "You can't hide forever." As I pushed through a door, I found myself in a large room filled with crates and equipment. I quickly glanced around, looking for a way to escape, but there was nowhere to hide. Suddenly, I heard a commotion outside, the sound of sirens approaching. Relief surged through me as I realized the police had arrived. "Marcus." I heard Tom's voice echoing from somewhere nearby. "Tom." I called back, desperation lacing my voice. In that moment, the door burst open, and Victor stormed in, rage etched on his face. "You think the police can save you?" Before I could react, he lunged at me, and we crashed to the ground, grappling for control. "Get off me!" I shouted, pushing against him with all my strength. But just as I thought I was gaining the upper hand, I heard Tom's voice again, closer this time. "Marcus." "I'm coming." Suddenly, the police burst into the room, weapons drawn. "Hands up." "You're surrounded." Victor's eyes widened in shock as he turned to face the officers. "This isn't over," he shouted, before being tackled to the ground. Tom rushed to my side, and together we watched as the officers apprehended Victor and Lucas, their faces filled with determination. "We did it," Tom said, his voice filled with disbelief. "Yeah," I replied, a mix of relief and exhaustion washing over me. As the officers led the order members away, I felt a sense of closure begin to settle within me. We had faced the darkness together, and we had emerged victorious. But deep down, I knew that the scars of our experience would remain, a constant reminder of the battle we had fought. In the weeks that followed, we began to rebuild our lives, working with the police to ensure that the order wouldn't rise again. And as we found strength in our friendship, I realized that we had each other to lean on, no matter what challenges lay ahead. Epilogue. Months passed since the confrontation with the order, and life began to return to a semblance of normalcy. Tom and I were finally able to breathe again, the weight of our past slowly lifting. We had kept in touch with the police, helping them piece together the remnants of the order and ensuring they wouldn't resurface. One evening, as we sat in my living room, I glanced at the journal that had sparked everything. "Do you think we'll ever be free from this?" I asked, my heart heavy with uncertainty. Tom considered my question for a moment. "I think we're stronger now," he replied. "We've faced the darkness and come out on the other side. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. I smiled, a flicker of hope igniting within me. You're right. We're a team, and we can handle whatever comes our way. As the sun set outside, casting warm hues across the room, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The battle was behind us, but the future was bright, filled with endless possibilities. And as long as we had each other, I knew we could overcome anything that lay ahead. Hope your dreams are filled with fear. Good night.